oh, hologram ghosts, and you would think that'd be so cool in real life. And then the reality sets in of pop-ups can now be real. You can walk down the street and get a pop-up ad in your face. Welcome to Podigious, a monthly gathering of disembodied voices that haunt your podcast feed, your spooky companion through Digimon Ghost Game.
This week we're discussing Episode 9, Warp Time, Episode 10, Game of Death, Episode 11, Kamaitachi, and Episode 12, Chain Letter. I'm Jeff, my pronouns are he, him, and the Digimon I would want to see spawn exponentially and flood the world is Burgermon, because then I think we could help solve climate change because we would have an infinite supply of beef without the harmful side effects of raising cattle. So, yeah.
I'm Aster, pronoun she, her, and I'm sitting here thankful that the weeds were only spreading with traditional chain letters and not with creepypastas.
And I'm Toya, my pronouns are he, him, and if I got pulled into a video game, I'd like to meet Sora from Kingdom Hearts, because that totally wouldn't be weird now that I'm older than him.
Oh no, I mean, he's still stuck at like 14, right?
I think he's 16 in the most recent game, but it's really weird that like when I first started playing the games, he was several years older than me.
And now he's like a child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Give me depressed millennial Sora.
Spoiler policy, like always, we'll be talking about everything in Ghost Game episodes up through 12, which is what has been released at the time we're recording this. And we'll be talking about the preview for episode 13, which was at the end of the episode, but we won't be talking about any leaks or info past episode 12, basically, which might be less information than you know at the time you're listening to this, because it's probably come out after episode 13 came out. And also, if we spoil any other seasons, we will give you a fair warning before we mention it.
I don't even read the TV previews anymore. I was during Adventure 2020, but at this point for this series, I figured I actually enjoy being surprised a little more. So I've actually stopped reading it.
Yeah, and after the whole people being hyped for a character named Daigo and then them barely being a character, kind of minor, tiny debacle that happened with people being excited by the spoilers. I don't know. I feel like, it's just easier to not engage with that and just experience it as it comes out.
I think the fans have also been better at not talking about it if it's not necessary, because I feel like during 2020 everyone was just posting everything. I don't know if everybody was just desperate to have something to be excited about or something, but it was really hard to avoid during Adventure 2020, and now during Ghost Game it's very easy to avoid.
Yeah, I guess especially during 2020 it was a lot of all the nouns everyone was using were the same. It's oh, blank is going to appear, and Gajamon's going to appear, whatever. And this time it's on the one hand, it's all new vocabulary, but also I feel like we might still have that once there are huge stakes. And even stuff there's been more contention about stuff like Gamamon's evolutions.
Right.
And that kind of thing, that gets spoiled. That's kind of hard to avoid.
I mean, I think after 2020, we're all kind of afraid to speculate anymore.
Yeah. That's how I feel.
Don't get your hopes up.
Yeah, easier just let go of the wheel, let Sister Monsieur just go crazy at the wheel. But before we get into this week's episodes, what's making us happy in the world of Digimon this month?
Well, I guess there's only one thing we can really talk about, because there's only one major thing that came out as news between last month and this month, and it was the announcement of that Digimon Con, which just came out of nowhere, I gotta say. They didn't build up anything, they just dropped that on us all of a sudden. But actually, specifically, you know how it came with that TCG illustration contest, which unfortunately is US and Japan only. My friend was actually super excited. She was saying I have been waiting for this day my entire life. Got super into it, so that specifically made me happy.
Yeah, it's a bummer that the contest is limited to US and Japan, but I assume there are lots of legal restrictions with it.
Yeah, that. I understand why, but because I've seen that kind of thing before, but it's annoying.
Yeah. I mean, you say Digimon Con, and I don't feel happiness. I feel fear. The word convention is terrifying to me now.
Despite the fact it's online only.
So they'll use it to spread malware instead.
Yeah, this latest week's episode just showed us what can happen. We should just get off the grid, never talk to each other.
No, just become hermits, go off into the wilderness, no danger, full no contact, the ultimate social distancing, at least 6 miles from every other person.
Looping back to Digimon Con, I don't know what hopes to expect out of that. I don't know.
I think actually the biggest take home I got out of it was they really do actually care about the non-Japanese side of the fans right now, because I think the idea of doing a simultaneous stream and deliberately doing extra streams for to accommodate different time zones would have been completely unthinkable maybe like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I guess we should explain what it is for people who haven't heard the news elsewhere. But so it's a multi-language event, right? It's going to be Japanese and English.
Japanese English.
And when is it actually scheduled to be?
February, so it's a little while off.
Oh yeah, that's sooner than I thought. I guess I, for some reason, assumed it was like going to take the place of DigiFest this year.
No, it's just February.
Yeah, and there's going to be soliciting questions for some of the staff.
Yes, for the director of this series, Chiyoka, and for the director of Tamers, Kaizawa. He also did Frontier and Hunters, but I think because it's the Tamers 20th anniversary, they're focusing on Tamers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm trying to not set expectations too high, but this is it's cool that they're like doing a specifically worldwide event.
I think the part where some people were perking up their ears was where they said that there's going to be video game news.
Oh no!
Because we all start thinking about one video game when that happens. Although I accept other video games too.
The only video game.
I love video games. Any video game news is welcome.
Watch, everybody gets excited for Survive news, and then they come out and announce a new mobile game.
I mean, I don't know what's the latest mobile game in China that the graphics look amazing?
Oh, New Century?
Yeah, New Century. I want that.
I mean, I know some people have been wondering if Ghost Game is going to get a game because it's called Ghost Game.
Yeah.
You kind of feel like it's kind of asking.
It gets a game, but it's exclusively an augmented reality game.
But yeah, that's exciting. The thing I'm excited for or happy about this month is I have one thing that I'm like mixed about, which is following up on last month when I was worried about the future health of the English version of the Digimon TCG because it seemed like the release in the United States. Actually, I'm not sure if it's the United States or it's the United States and Canada, it's North America in general. Anyway, but that the United States release is was delayed for BT6 and EX1 and the recent Starter decks, and it seemed like there was no sign of them doing anything to course correct that. So it seemed like in the future all the sets were going to be delayed and it was going to lead to an indefinite splintering of the community. But there was positive news on that front in that they announced a worldwide release date for the next booster set BT7 in February, and it was not it's going to be worldwide except for US and then a separate US date. It was like worldwide date. The bad news is that since they announced that, like a week or two later, they announced that it's delayed. So I don't know if it's actually going to be worldwide, but it seems that they at least, the thing that I was worried about is like, I was afraid they're not going to bite the bullet to try to sync it up again. And it seems like they're at least trying to sync it up again. But
yeah, I think ideally they also know that it's best to keep it synchronized if possible.
Yeah, I was worried that they were, going to give up on that idea, but it seems like they're trying to keep it in sync. So I'm mildly excited for it. But since that's kind of a mixed, I'm not sure whether it's making me happy or not. The bit of news that is making me excited is that the full set of parallel card artwork was revealed for the Japanese release of EX2, the Tamers themed special mini set, and like there's so much amazing artwork there.
That artwork. I was actually really concerned because I didn't actually like the initial Tamer card art because like it seemed, I don't know, it seemed like lower quality than like the usual Tamer card art. So I was like, are they like kind of like spread thin because they're doing so many like anime recreation art that they kind of like had to put a little less into the regular Tamer card? And then I saw the parallels. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay, that's good. That's really good.
Yeah, for people who haven't seen them, I'll have a link in the show notes to the page where you can see them all, and they're like mimicking the poses they make when doing their, what is it called, Matrix Evolution?
It's still called Matrix Evolution in Japanese, yeah.
Yeah, the when they merge with their Digimon, and it they look great. Even the characters that don't do that effect, like Ai and Mako,
they have the pose now.
But yeah, it looks, and there's even not just the Tamers, but so much great parallel artwork. And like I was worried going into EX2 that like, because EX1 was, people aren't following TCG, is the quote unquote classic collection that uses all artwork, well almost all artwork from the, oh god, Toya, correct me here, what's the name of the the classic.
It's
Digimon
also
game.
called the Digital Monster card game, which is confusing as hell. But
Oh.
most Westerners call it Hyper Coliseum, I think.
Right. It's Hyper Coliseum is also used in Japanese sometimes, but that's technically a rule set of the Digital Monster card game. It's just that nobody played the alternate rule sets. So
Okay.
Hyper Coliseum was functionally the only format a lot of the time, outside of a few of the official tournaments that were held like once a year. And then on the English side, that became I think it was, did they just call it the Digimon card game over here? They had rule names for the other rule sets, like Street Battle rules, but
As far as English speakers go, if you call it Hyper Coliseum, people will know what you're talking about.
yeah.
Yeah, and for people who don't follow the
Digibattle card game was the English
Oh.
equivalent to Hyper Coliseum, more or less, but they inverted a lot of the rules for the Digibattle card game while not actually changing card effects to match that.
Well, anyway, the artwork comes from what most people think of as the old school Digimon card game. And I don't like that art style, so I was kind of like, oh, this whole set is stuff that is nostalgic for a thing that I don't have any nostalgia for, and I think looks ugly.
Well, yet nobody really has nostalgia for it because nobody could play it. The number of people playing the original Digibattle card game was minuscule. There were probably 5 judges in all of North America.
I mean, the reason why I don't like it is that it's just not original art, and it wasn't original art back then. Like, it's legitimately just like the concept art for all those Digimon, and they just splotched it on the card and called it a day. So, like, you know.
It's the equivalent of like taking stock Ken Sugimori Pokemon art, throwing a Photoshop filter on a background, and just pasting them together and making commons for Pokemon. Only it's every card in the Digibattle game.
Yeah, so the fact that the whole EX1 set was that, and then I was kind of worried, like, are all of these EX sets going to be like that? Especially because I think one of the first couple Tamers cards they revealed were, like essentially redraws or screenshots of the anime scene,
Yeah.
like scenes in the anime. So I was like, oh, is that what this means? That's a Tamer set that like they're just going to use essentially screenshots of the anime?
I think they redrew it, actually.
Right. Yeah,
I don't think they actually, like, they didn't use screenshots in the anime. They actually, like, redrew it from scratch.
Right. Now that I'm looking at it, it's like it's so much higher quality than a screenshot could be.
Screenshot redraw contest. It's like when everybody was doing that one frame from Sailor Moon.
Oh yeah, but yeah, it looks great. And after recent Tamers, stuff, I was not in the mood to really be excited about Tamers again. But this is making me.
I'm begging you. They're doing question taking for the director of Tamers, Kaizawa, and I'm just like begging you guys, please behave. Like, I know we've all got like really fired up emotions about this, but like, let's be nice to official staff now.
Yeah, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater here.
Yeah,
and it's staff that is not the person we're thinking of.
I'm actually tempted to send in like Frontier and Hunter's questions just to troll, but I think that even that's a little too much because they clearly want Tamer's questions.
I have big questions about Frontier still, like 20 years later.
I mean, I would like to believe that this is segging into Frontier celebrations next year because Kaizawa also did Frontier. So, like, if he's also going to be in attendance and Frontier's 20th is also next year, I'm hoping, but we'll see.
Next year, I submit my question, what is the digital world actually? They never answer that in Frontier. I wish they did. It's basically just Narnia.
Yeah. So, Toya, do you have your own bit of news?
No, I don't. For me, yeah, Digicon was basically the only news this month. I'm not as excited for the individual card reveals right now, but I've been feeling a lot of fatigue from the fact that in the world of TCGs, well, the world is always ending, especially right now.
I see.
Is that card fight specific or?
No, it's a general card game issue that like we've been seeing. People were talking every time somebody talks about, oh, now that things are opening up, it's like a curse because suddenly you find out, oh, hey, this whole card shop got COVID. And there's individual, it's difficult to like get a good grasp on the situation because there's individual parts of like the United States where it seems pretty good right now, where certain shops in like Southern California are able to operate. But then I'll hear back from my friends in Ohio where everything is running rampant and like Omicron is everywhere. And any attempts at forecasting an optimistic future seem to be just cursing things.
Yeah. At least Digimon seems to have a decent infrastructure in place for people playing tournaments online.
There is like good news going forward for Vanguard and some other card games that like Vanguard's been greenlit for several more seasons in advance, which hasn't happened in a few years, so that's obviously going to keep going for a while. And we actually are getting like some simultaneous English and Japanese releases soon, but it's like a collaboration title with an anime no one's ever really heard of called Record of Ragnarok. And it's all very mixed for me. It's hard for me to be positive about the card game world.
But aren't they also doing Shaman King?
Yeah, we're finally getting the Shaman King set that I think came out in Japan a while ago.
Oh, I didn't realize that has been out in Japan for a while.
Like, Japan also got a Monster Strike collab set, and there was some talk in the English fandom that, like, we might not get these in order to just make the releases more sustainable, because, like, Monster Strike was huge in Japan and isn't really a phenomena here at all. And Shaman King is probably popular enough to be a safe bet, but people kind of figured that they might just skip over it in order to better synchronize releases.
Yeah, that mechanics of that and like having entire sets locked behind collaborations that might not come over seems awkward at best. And yeah, then you have things like a series that no one's heard of that they're putting effort into, and it's like, yeah, I don't know.
And like, I mean, I know the Digimon fandom with the card game is very upset about the idea of things being desynced potentially for the long term, but there's trade-offs to this. In Vanguard, people are actually kind of upset about like the fact that all of Bushiroad's card games seem to be becoming Vice Schwarz with collaborations in every game. And like, well, imagine if you were playing the Digimon card game and they announced, hey, we're doing a collab with Pokemon.
I mean,
we're gonna make Ash into a Tamer card.
Oh no.
Specifically the Pokemon anime series.
I mean, who knows? We're in unprecedented times.
Oh, come on. We're all tired of hearing that.
Boy, how many times have I heard that one?
I just hope Digicon is like fun. There's some excitement. I hope that they're saving up something that will really get people fired up, you know?
I mean, I think like any major things they have under the burner are going to be like deliberately like timed for that if they have anything coming up in the next 2 months or so. Yeah. I mean, it's a good time to reveal. And also because, they used to do these kinds of things at like Anime Expo, which of course would currently be like one of the worst times to reveal things like this. But, I do remember I was there at Anime Expo 2019 when that was the last time they actually showed up, and they talked about the Kizuna was coming up at the time, and also the Digimon Survive, and also stuff about the upcoming port of Cyberspace Complete Edition. So there was a lot going on there, but now it's impossible to have that kind of event unless you're waiting until August. Like, I think they're doing this specifically because they need to generate hype for upcoming projects, but they can't wait all the way until August to do that, which is stupid. And like, unless you want to screen Kizuna again, it's like, when are you going to do another announcement? So that's a good time to do it. Because like, I feel like DigiNavi is probably not hype enough for certain major announcements, Yeah,
it wouldn't get the level of press coverage outside of dedicated Digimon outlets.
Yeah. So I think that's really what it's for. Like, if you have anything you want to say, like it's like the right time to do it. Talk about upcoming anime things, or talking about video games, or talking about just like any big thing that actually needs attention. Like February specifically is like the right time to do it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And speaking of time.
Speaking of Warped Time, that is the name of an episode of a show called Digimon Ghost Game,
which we are here to talk about.
Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. This is the wrong podcast. I fell asleep for several hours and woke up with the wrong podcast. No, anyway, so yes, episode 9, Warped Time. In this episode, Clackmon returns to haunt Hiro, causes him to develop the stress and insomnia of a millennial at a dead-end job, really takes him to a library to relax, where they meet Pokemon, the Infodump machine. Clackmon draws out the shadow of evil Gamamon again, and is overwhelmed by his own attack, and then Gamamon evolves into Beta Gamamon and saves Clackmon by punching him really hard over and over, and that is CPR, I guess, which also reverse the clock. I don't know.
It reminds me, like, whenever you get a scenario in an RPG where it's normally built around like, okay, go have this cutscene, fight this boss, beat it up, and then get the end cutscene. But then they try to apply it to something else, and it just ends up having the exact same mechanics.
Yeah, I've actually been thinking about just that recently because I've been playing the first couple Ace Attorney games, and I'm like, oh man, the whole like construction of Ace Attorney is so brilliant because like in so many games are always built around attacking. Like you're always doing something to like, you're always on the offensive, and yet Ace Attorney makes that like in the legal sense you're on the defense, but you're on the defense by attacking. I don't know, it's a really smart way of like reframing the way video games work in a way that is still kind of like defensive, and Bailgamon just punching hard over and over again isn't that. I don't know.
The best defense is a good offense. The objection is a placeholder. You think of your actual statement later.
Yep, basically. But yeah, so this episode I thought was pretty nice to get some I guess not lore but mechanics, getting Pokemon introduced and talking through how the materialization worked.
I mean, like, the way Pokemon has been repeatedly showing up as a regular now, it's very clear, like, establishing Pokemon's existence. Pokemon and Bakuman may also do things. Establishing both of their existences and their presence in the narrative was very important.
Yeah, it's not great for podcasting to introduce a Pokemon and Bakuman because it's definitely gonna be hard to distinguish those.
And just wait until they bring in Bakemon and then Bakamon.
Oh god, wait, there is no Bakuman, right?
Not yet, there isn't.
Okay.
I know when in Frontier when Namon was being kind of stupid, like Pokemon would like knock him over with the book and go like Bakamon, but that's as close as it goes.
Also, as we know, Toya, from the amazing Cyber Sleuth translation, every ghost is actually a Bakuman. Oh wait, not every ghost, every monster. Because if people aren't aware, Bakemono just means monster. It doesn't mean ghost specifically. Well, anyway, they translated. Wait, is it that it said Bakemon and they translated as Bakemono, or they saw Bakemono and translated as Bakemon?
Well, Bakemon is like a slang shortening of Bakemono.
Right.
And it was written in katakana too in the original game, but just like I think the translator must have been given the line without context.
Yeah, which definitely happens all the time.
And so like the translator probably figured they were talking about a real Bakemon.
Right.
Or they control F'd katakana Bakemon and just did find replace.
Right. So in this scenario, there's no Digimon named Bakemon, but then they just randomly mention a Digimon named Bakemon. Right.
Yep.
Well, anyway, back to this episode. I thought it was cute that Ruli's like, oh, it's stress, let's go to a library. And like Hiro doesn't question how like as a kid, would you really think of like a library as a fun relaxation spot? But then it turns out she just wants to get ice cream, and those both fit.
I think like I'm used to like Instagrammers and other like social media people being able to make anything interesting out of anything. So,
Yeah.
so I figured like she probably came up with some idea, but it was actually the cafe.
And also when I first watched it, I grafted my own feelings of like, yeah, a giant library, that sounds awesome. Yeah, of course. Books everywhere. Yeah.
The library near my place is so tiny. So I haven't been to an actual big one in so long.
I mean, for a moment, I thought that Ruli was just really channeling my sister there, because the whole idea of going to the library to relax is very on point for her. But no, it was all a ruse.
Yeah. And okay, one thing I didn't really question when I first watched the episode, and then noticed when I rewatched it, is like, what actually happened? They conveniently sidestep this question by only having Hiro time skip when no one else is present. But what do you think actually happens to Hiro's body when time skips? Like, is he just sitting? Is he just like standing there, or like sitting there still not moving, or like is he disappearing?
So my friend I watched this every week with was like, we were speculating that he was just like standing there zoning into space and just like nobody wanted to bother him. But their question was, I feel like Gamamon at some point would have been like, Hiro, I'm hungry. At some point. But at the same time, like Gamamon is so well behaved that he wouldn't have like tried very hard until later when he realizes what's going on.
Right.
And they do make a point of separating them.
Yeah.
Or having him sleep or something. Yeah. Sometimes he was separated though. It's just like, why is Gamamon with Kyoshua right now in the dorm? Okay, whatever.
He's like an actual child. He just wanders wherever.
Totally. Yeah. Oh wait, the one line in this episode when they're it's everyone except for Hiro, Pokemon, and Bakuman. Oh god. Anyway, they're all at the cafe sitting around the table, and like there's clearly giant holograms eating food, and I guess it's like a mom and a child walk by, and the mom just like, that's probably just an ad, ignore it. And I was like, that's so realistic. Like,
Yes.
I don't know what they did, if this was just a dubism, or if in the Japanese dialogue of Adventure, if they also framed what was happening as like, oh, they're just filming a movie. But that never sat well with me.
It wasn't dismissed as it, but whenever like something like major happened, like some people would wonder if it was like a movie demonstration. There would be like a couple comments about it, but but then at the same time, the stance taken in Adventure was actually that they failed to hide it from people, because between Adventure and Zero 2, there was a lore, like they explained it more so in Zero 2, but that the incident in Adventure didn't get like swept under the rug. And as a result, like the government even started trying to research them, and because of that, like Genai and all of his friends had to like go into like the network and like delete all the data they were gathering up, because the government did notice, the people did notice, and even like the journalists noticed, and the Takeru and Yamato's parents noticed, and they were started doing like more research into it. Soda's dad noticed, started doing research into it. So like actually they didn't sweep it under the rug at all in Adventure.
Right.
But I think they were able to do that because Adventure only took place over 3 days in real life.
Mm-hmm.
But like here, you do have to do like cover. But then again, it's easier to do the cover-ups here because this is a world where holograms exist.
Right.
I liked that dismissal of it as an ad, because you do look at this technology where you're like, oh, hologram ghosts, and you'd think that'd be so cool in real life, and then the reality sets in of pop-ups can now be real.
Yeah.
You can walk down the street and get a pop-up ad in your face.
And it's so easy to imagine that like things that once were novel and exciting now are like, oh my god, just ignore this, get on with my daily life. Like
it's like that scene in Back to the Future when like Marty, part 2, when like Marty shows up and then like there's like the Jaws advertisement and they have like the hologram shark come out and like almost bite off his face, and he even starts screaming, and then after the shark disappears it's like gets less real every time. Or it was like something like that. It was like shark still looks fake. That's what he said.
Yeah. Also, on the thread of Adventure and destruction and then being rebuilt for 02, it's weird when you realize that like all the landmarks in Tokyo, not in Tokyo, all the landmarks in Odaiba, at least most of them in 02 they were visiting are like reconstructed because they were destroyed in Adventure.
They actually say that. They say like, we just rebuilt that. Like they actually bring up multiple times like, oh god, like I hope the monsters don't destroy it again because we just rebuilt that thing.
And okay, so this episode, the explanation of the various the states they go through, I guess I saw some complaints that it was like not that it was like a little bit complicated, and also that it like by like putting all the logic on the floor, now like they might trip up and like not be consistent with it down the road. But I honestly, after rewatching, I'm like, I feel like they made the rules so kind of loosey goosey that I'm totally happy with it. Like I feel like it's just kind of like there are lots of states. They can go between them kind of rapidly, and materialization requires emotions/feelings. So like
that's the take home you need to get from it, that there's like emotions tied to it, and then like if you have a digivice it can forcibly do it.
Right, which I think that's kind of like the logic for how the digivice helps, is that like the emotions are kind of tied to the partner somehow. And
which is basically like the kind of conceit that we've had since Adventure, that like, generally speaking, there is some kind of emotional connection between, the partner evolution and the kid, that's been a staple since the very beginning, but now we're actually just kind of like laying it flat on the floor now.
Yeah, and it also it frames it interestingly for like characters like Pokemon, who like the reason they can materialize and control everything is just because like they've self-actualized, they've gone to therapy, and they like understand themselves, and like
they're very calm people.
They read self-help booklets.
When I was rewatching Adventure last year with several friends, we pointed out that there's like a lot of things that with obviously like it's a different situation because Adventure was the first one, but a lot of things that seem really obvious or taken for granted are basically treated like they're major discoveries, because the point is that the kids have to figure it out themselves, even if we as the audience know it already. So to find out that the digital world is made of data, Koshiro takes something like, what was it, 18, 19 episodes, and he like delivers it like the biggest discovery he ever made. Like, this world is actually made of data, and everybody in the cast just like gasps, and the audience has probably known this from day one. And but the thing is, like, it's interesting in that you kind of get the perspective that like, okay, when you think about it in universe, they probably wouldn't have it be that obvious either. So like it's kind of like you get to this episode and you see like, oh, evolution is tied to emotions, and we're like, oh right, that's something we've been taking as a granted, but the kids themselves don't know this.
And anybody that's actually coming into the show without prior Digimon experience might not catch on to that immediately.
Right.
The data reveal, I know that was surprising to me as a kid too, actually, but I wasn't like familiar with computers at the time.
Right. Well, I mean, I think there was, Digimon Media before Adventure. So if you were following that beforehand, you probably would know that already. And I'm sure like all the, actually back then I think it was harder to like find media synopsis, but I'm sure like the promotional materials were talking about it too. But
I also feel like it's kind of hard to put myself back in in the mindset of what kind of other media I had consumed at that age, but like
Space Jam.
that For me, I think that was after. Well, in any case, like, I definitely was not familiar with the concept of, like, going into a video game, which seems like commonplace nowadays.
Yeah, I think the closest I got was that Magic School Bus episode where they like get shrunken inside of the computer, but they're not like literally in the software, they are in the hardware.
I don't know if I remember that episode.
I think they almost get run over by like a printer printing a test screen.
I wonder if that was, like, after my Magic School Bus era.
I was gonna name drop some stuff, but I realized they all came out after the original adventure, so I have nothing. This is what happens when I come in late.
Magic School Bus gets programmed, 1997. Okay, so the part of the episode that I think is the worst part of the episode is I guess we alluded to before, but the punching, just being able to magically reverse.
CPR.
Yeah, it's okay. There's that, but there's also the fact that once he's healed with the magic CPR, he just
Gets off scot-free.
like redeeming him. Okay, it's cool that Hiro chooses to help him. Like that's a great character moment. Like I really appreciate that. But then yeah, getting off scot-free without even like apologizing or like mentioning how he's reformed, just kind of like, oh well, I can't be bad now. And it's like, what? That's it?
Of course you can.
I mean, I figured it was more like a very tsundere way of saying that, like, because he was at their mercy, basically, at one point, like,
Right.
kind of got pinned to the wall now.
Yeah, it's like I can kind of headcanon a lot more. Like it's kind of like you can leap to there are obvious things that he could have said there, and like can headcanon what he's thinking through, and so like doesn't on rewatch. I'm not like, oh, this is egregious, but it does feel it fits into a trend of a lot of Ghost Game episodes ending abruptly and kind of like, oh, okay, you're just okay now. I guess that's okay, sure.
Well, he's under Pokemon's care now, right?
Yeah. So that's a good.
They're not just like saying like you completely run off and do whatever. Pokemon's like, we're keeping an eye on you.
Yeah, true.
I was thinking when I was watching this episode, I kind of thought that it would be more of a turning point than it was, because once the Dark Evolution started to come out of Gamamon, I figured that the driving question of the series would start to shift from where's my dad, how do I get to him, to what's up with Gamamon and what is this dark power that he keeps using. But I think that for it to like that has started in this episode, but for it to become the main line of questioning, I think Gamamon would have had to actually have killed Clockmon, and they didn't want to go into that just yet because we're still at this stage of like establishing the different evolutionary paths.
Yeah, I think overall this episode was a little disappointing in that like I kind of expected it to, like Clockmon returning, I kind of expected it to like maybe close up some previous loose ends and then open others, and instead it closed Clockmon and just repeated the same note about Gamamon but didn't really add to that.
Yeah.
So in the end, it was more episodic than I felt like was kind of, maybe it was my own fault for hyping it up, but like was kind of implicitly promised by the return of Clockmon. But yeah, now that I said that out loud, I'm like, no, the show did not promise anything. I read into that.
Actually, they were very straightforward about the fact that you should expect this to be more episodic than usual. So
yeah. Turns out I am the problem.
No, it's the children that are wrong.
I think it's more that what we got out of the episode was actually very different from what we expected, because we did actually get something extremely substantial, which is the lore dump in Pokemon and Bakuman. I mean, that's not we were expecting dramatic escalation. Instead, we got factual escalation, which is very different.
Yeah.
And with that explanation, some of the past episodes, they do make more internal sense now, like what was going on with Dracmon
and Sirenmon. Sirenmon's episode makes a lot more sense now, because she started materializing like right when she got like super excited.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when everyone suddenly started to see her.
I like the framing that like the idea that like these more human emotions, like acting in a less digital, more, well, I don't know, it's a little bit weird to say like the opposite digital is human, but anyway, like getting these more like real world humanoid things is what makes them materialize in the human world.
We did start getting a hint that something is going wrong back in the digital world too, because Pokemon says something is causing the dimensional rift to tear, or like causing Digimon to go back and forth against our will. And like once you're carried over to the other world, the only thing you can do is just try and survive. But it wasn't intentional. They didn't intend to come here. They got dragged over here by something mysterious.
Yeah.
And I hope that something mysterious plot thread gets followed up on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it will. It's just a matter of
how long it'll take.
Yeah, like 20 episodes from now.
I've been through some anime where they really put it off until like the last 2 episodes, and then the answer isn't satisfying.
Yeah. Well, moving on to the next episode, episode 10, Game of Death. We get a tale as old as time. Hiro's pervy friend is excited to see a hot lady in a video game, and the hot lady sucks up his soul so her brother can turn him into alcohol. You know, happened to my friend.
Yeah, it usually happens with mobile games, though.
Oh god, you're right.
Well, I mean, funny thing, because the twin Digimon here originally came from the mobile games.
Oh really?
Well, not the mobile games. It was like Gentrix or something, but like functionally got like cloned into the mobile games. It was from that really weird era of the franchise where it was pretty much all but dead except for the mobile games.
And they showed Ofanimon's face.
Yeah, it got really fan servicey and not in a good way. That was a very strange era of the franchise right there. So it was a little weird to see those two come. It's kind of like the equivalent of when you had like a game that was an eroge and it wasn't really supposed to be an eroge, but they were doing it because that's what you had to do to survive in the industry. And then finally they make the console port version that's got like all the adult scenes taken out. That was kind of the feeling.
Because Jintrix was that was like a browser game, but it was being primarily played on feature phones, right?
Yeah, and then eventually they ported it to actual mobile game. You might know it. You might know that port as Digimon Heroes / Crusaders.
I was gonna say, just looking at the Wikimon article for Jintrix, I see that it was released in February 2011 and service was terminated September 2012. 1 year later.
Yep, they were on that train way before Square Enix.
Well, yeah, anyway, Kyoshiro shows off his fighting game skills to summon the hot lady Kinkakumon. He and Jellymon impress her so much that she comes into the human world and causes him to faint. Jellymon struggles to fight with Kyoshiro, admits she needs him, electrocutes him awake, evolves to Tesla Jellymon, and defeats Kinkakumon. And then Kinkakumon forces her brother to return all the souls and promises to return for a rematch someday. This is the most, like, for some reason, I am just like, yeah, that was an episode.
Oh, I was deeply disappointed that Jellymon's Tesla form was not a car.
Isn't that based off Nikola Tesla? The actual OG Tesla?
Yes, it is. I know.
I think it's based on the Tesla coil specifically, at least in her, like when she evolves, it makes it Tesla coil.
I decided to go quiz my friends who knew about fighting games on how realistic the fighting game portrayal is, because you know how when anime decides to portray games, and they're like, kids these days like video games and like go completely off the rails. This was actually pretty realistic, actually. Other than maybe the VR goggles, that's a little...
Yeah, playing fighting games with VR goggles is just...
a little weird.
That's conspicuous consumption. That's not... There's no functional purpose behind putting... Like, it's still inside view.
Right, it's still 2D.
But then again, given the way the game industry is going right now, I wouldn't put it past it.
I mean, even if it was somewhat realistic, like, they did pull the, like, double hacking equivalent in a fighting game of, like, I just added another side to my controller, now I have more buttons and I'm pressing them faster, and it's like,
well, I think the idea was actually that they're cheating.
Yeah.
That's not actually how you're supposed to play the game, but they're cheating.
Now, for this to be really realistic and also generationally appropriate, they'd have to be playing Fortnite.
Oh no!
It took me so long to realize that Fighters Kingdom is a parody of King of Fighters.
Oh. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but specifically, I asked someone like, how feasible is a 20 win streak, and it turned out it's actually pretty feasible if you're pretty good at the game.
Oh yeah, you just got to make a fresh account, so you'll only get paired with newbies.
But even as long as there's no like ranked system, you can do 20 pretty easily. Apparently, yeah, that's what my friend said. And also the fact that they established that Kyoshiro actually was a regular player of this game and not like just he's good at games so we can just have him be good at any game. Because
right.
that's not actually true. But although actually now that I think about it, there was one thing about the Crunchyroll translation when he said that that game was like a hit with me. That's I don't know. I imagine this nuance probably still got across, but that's a very literal like translation of the Wase Ego Hito, which what he's actually saying is that like I used to be like super like emotionally invested in that game, and then like when everything went wrong, like I had to throw it away. Like he was actually like really like personally into the game in the past, so that's why it's not just that he was like good at it; he was also like really into it.
Which makes it even funnier that the reason he stopped playing it was like there was a rumor that if you won too much, then you would, I don't know, meet a scary lady.
He played Final Fantasy XI for 5 years straight and then heard that the level cap might get raised to 99 and he quit.
Honestly, though, even if Hito's friend weren't a pervert, I feel like just hearing that, especially which we learned in the effects of episode 12, just hearing a rumor that you'll see a hot lady if you have a 20 win streak, we get a lot of people to do a 20 win streak just to see what happens.
Yeah.
We should spread this rumor into some game where people don't know Digimon.
Also, I remember when this episode came out, I was like, oh my god, Kotaro's being even more of a perv. But like looking back on it, I'm like, okay, Kotaro, it seems to be like roughly 1 in 4 episodes where he does something pervy. And that's, like there is a trend in anime recently, anime and manga, of basically Mineta from My Hero Academia, if people are familiar with that, of pervy characters who just say the most pervy, obnoxious things with some consequences. Like they get beat up, or they get like ignored, or they get like ridiculed, but like it's still like really obnoxious things they say, and kind of terrible. And it's
I don't know if I'd call that a trend or more like a entrenchment at this point, because that goes all the way back to like like Master Roshi in Dragon Ball Z, or just original Dragon Ball too.
Yeah, I'm not familiar enough with like what those instances looked like, but I know that like at least with Mineta, and also a little bit the other, I guess, big example recently is Zenitsu from Demon Slayer, who Kyoshiro resembles creepily a lot, at least in terms of like having electricity powers and like blacking out regularly. But anyway, yeah, of like these characters who like the whole fan base hates when they do it, but like they're still very common, and maybe it's just the vocal part of the fan base that is annoyed by it, and there are unvocal people who actually find it funny. But
also it's really hard to account for like, are we seeing regional reception to the characters?
Yeah, that too. Yeah. But Kotaro is like that, but like turned down like on a volume knob all the way down to 1, and it's like, okay, he's not so bad in comparison.
I get the impression that he's also kind of supposed to be like the idea of this is the kind of friend circle that Hito had to keep around him before the other two came into his life, It's like I mean, at the beginning we saw him like mooching off Hito at the beginning. It's like, is this even a good friend? But like
I remember feeling that way about the about Takado's friends in Tamers.
Hirokazu and Kenta.
Yeah, but I guess by the end they are somewhat redeemed.
Not only did they shape up, they were generally kind of like more supportive friends, even like outside like being a little brash and stuff. I guess I would put it just like 10-year-olds are kind of like that. But in Kotaro's case, not only is he a middle school student, but he, again, like I still haven't forgotten the fact he was mooching off Hito's homework in the first episode.
Oh yeah, that's not pervy related, but that's probably the most manipulative.
And verbally bragging about using him.
I mean, he kind of reminds me of like Junpei in Persona 3.
Oh yeah, a kid-friendly version.
Yeah, just the aged down. Like he'll grow up to be Junpei.
Isn't he the like closeted gay one, or am I?
No, that's Yosuke.
Okay,
that's from 4,
I don't
Persona
know
4.
the names of the characters.
Junpei's just a normal like womanizer.
Oh, okay.
Who also, I think, copies your homework at points and doesn't pay attention in class, and he's quite a slacker, which is kind of funny because I think Persona 3's school is supposed to be more exclusive, so he had to get very good scores to get in there.
Or mooch off people with good scores.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if I was permanently banned from my school's honor society, but I got caught for someone copying my essay in high school because they asked to see it for inspiration, and then they just blatantly copied paragraphs. And it doesn't feel good. People do that, but it's kind of sad that Hiro doesn't really mind. But it's also a different culture in Japan. It's not like...
Well, also the whole point is that he's an unusual doormat.
Yeah.
They actually make a point of that. Like, wow, you just like do whatever people ask you.
Oh, one thing I thought was interesting on rewatch this episode, I noticed, or I didn't really connect before, that until this episode, until Jellymon evolves, it's we've only seen Gammamon evolve. So like in universe, especially since like Angormon said that evolving in this way is special, like I kind of expected more of a surprise from the fact that another Digimon could do it too. But I guess it's, as savvy fans, we can connect the dots and be like, yeah, of course they're all going to evolve. But especially since by the end of these 12 episodes, Gammamon has evolved 3 times, it's like, it does really make you wonder, like, did Hiro's dad do something special to Gammamon to make him extra evolve-y?
I mean, in the promotional material, they did say that even among Digimon, Gammamon is a little weird or unusual or just unknown. So, but I think that there's 2 things. One, there's Gammamon himself, and then 2, there's the Digivice.
Yeah.
So both of them are breaking rules in independent ways.
Right. So yeah, the stuff that Angormon was surprised by there is more probably just the stuff with the bracelets.
Are we going to start a betting pool over whether or not Gammamon was grown in a lab?
I don't think he was grown in a lab. I think he just...
My friend's current theory is that Hiro's dad actually found Gulus, started off as a monster and then tried kind of like somehow managed to bring him down to friendly, cute form, and then gave him to Hiro, hoping that he could like prevent him from going back there again.
Oh, that's a really good theory.
I think that Hiro's dad's research was funded by John Hammond, which is why his Digimon partner is a dinosaur. That was a Jurassic Park joke.
Okay, I was like, I'm guessing it's Jurassic Park reference. I'm not sure. Oh, yeah.
My big takeaway from this episode is that we are totally justified in bullying Kiyoshiro for his gamer chair.
He uses his VR headset so much. I just see him and I want to punch him, but in a good way.
You want to punch him in a good way?
I don't know. I don't actually want to punch him. I also like how like Jellymon wakes him up and then like he immediately like Jellymon had an emotional catharsis kind of like not off screen but while he was knocked out, and then he doesn't like need to like be synced up again after that. He's just like, oh yeah, let me do my whole Chuny shtick and like pretend to have my limit break, and it actually works. And it's like like I think it totally makes sense that someone who's pretending to do that like could actually synchronize well with someone who had the emotional catharsis while they were asleep. And then,
well, sometimes you just gotta get in the mood, right?
yeah, and he does the mood. That's all he does.
Masato has to like punch a Digimon if he wants to get in the mood. So for
Yeah.
Kiyoshiro, it's like he has to be a Chuny.
Yeah, exactly. Well, moving on to the next episode, Kamaitachi. In this episode, Ruli hears rumors about weird, dangerous gusts of wind, worries about Angormon going off on his own at night, and while taking pictures off on her own, she runs into the source of the wind gusts, a Repmon arguing with its own tail, cat dog style, and Angormon flies to the rescue to defend Ruli, pins on Repmon so she can give them some relationship counseling, and then Angormon lets Ruli know about his secret Digimon support group, and they agree to be more considerate of each other's feelings.
I really love the mental image of Repamon just being a dog chasing its own tail, but the dog is made of knives.
I was surprised to find out that's actually in the null canon. Like,
Yeah.
I was thinking that's such a strange premise, but then I went to like, I headed right to like the reference book, and I was like, it's right there, like in very like clear words.
Yeah, like I remember just thinking like it's weird that they like modified the design to like have these like eyes on the tail. It's like no, the eyes have been there the whole time, and like it's like an intrinsic part of the concept.
Yeah, it was past Digimon series that just kind of discarded these elements.
Well, Repmon, okay, did Repmon actually appear? Yeah, I guess so.
Wasn't it in Savers?
I mean, supposedly it's like an evolved form of Kudamon from Savers, but I'm like, did they actually appear as that in the show? I don't remember.
The funny thing is that my closest association is actually Cyber Sleuth for some reason. But no, I do believe it did actually show up in Savers, just not very much.
Mm-hmm.
Kudamon got kind of sidelined. I mean, it was already a supporting character, but...
Well, for Kudamon, it was more that they skipped to the higher forms really fast.
Yeah.
So you just didn't have a lot of impression of it. But also Kudamon, Repamon and Savers was not arguing tail, so...
Yeah, no. That would be a weird quirk to introduce just for like one point in the evolution line, and it just goes away. So like this episode in general, I feel like I appreciate, and I also saw a lot of positive sentiment when it came out about like having a very heartwarming and positive message and takeaway, and I agree with that. But I feel like the execution, not that the execution was off, but that like a lot of the way the message was presented fell flat to me, because like I feel like they were acting like Ruli was in the wrong too, and it was like I don't think she was in the wrong. Like she was communicating with Angormon, and Ignoromon, yeah, that's what Angormon was ignoring her, what she was clearly, like worried about.
I mean, she was worried about it. I think the problem is like she was worried about it, but at the same time, it's like a pseudo hypocrisy in that like she's worried about it, but she's also saying like, you do that, like I'm giving you your space, but then at the same time she gets mad that like he won't talk to her.
So she did like say it's okay that you go off on your own, but I feel like at the point where she's like, I think it's the fact that she was actually asking. Like if she wasn't asking, then it's okay. I can see how they are both not communicating, but like she was asking and he was not telling her information. And I think the other part of it is that like the eventual reason that we get for why he doesn't want to talk about it feels so not simple, but like paper thin and contrived. And then he also, at the same time where he explains why he didn't talk about it, he's also breaking those, like nothing's changed that makes it now acceptable to talk about this support group or whatever it's called, this gathering. But he just suddenly is, I guess it's reached a breaking point where his relationship with Ruli is important enough to say it now and to break the rule. But it's like, if that rule. I don't know. It just seems like
Well, he had to break it in order to tell Repamon because the others were around.
right, but like why was that okay, but telling Ruli before wasn't okay? I feel like that almost makes it worse.
Well, if he's broken it already, like it's like what's the point now? Because like of all the people you should be telling if you're already about breaking it, then like there's that person right there.
Well, I guess I just feel like he was willing to like hurt his relationship with Ruli by not telling her, but once there's a Digimon that like like a random Digimon they need to help out, then like it's worth risking for that. I don't know. Like I guess it killed two birds with one stone by coming clean about it, but I don't know. I guess I feel like maybe it's inherent in kind of like relationship based kind of scenarios like this, like just the fact that there's the whole "Am I the asshole?" subreddit, and like
Yeah.
people come away with like completely wildly different responses to scenarios, like is indicative of the fact that you can't lay out a scenario and then like have everyone agree with who was in the right and who was in the wrong.
Right.
And maybe it's inherent to these kind of scenarios, but for me particularly, it fell flat.
Somebody write an "Am I the asshole?" post, but from Ruli's perspective, and then just post it to Reddit.
How do I put it? Do you know how it feels when you get like secondhand embarrassment from what the characters are doing on screen? And like it's not because the episode is written badly. It's just because you're just really like cringing at what the characters are doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know that feeling? Yeah, that was me watching this entire episode. I think it's just because like knowing that they were constantly like on the verge of talking, but not quite there is what makes it like very difficult to deal with, because they are like one step away, but they're just not following up on it, and that's like the part that's kind of like ooh okay,
like you wish you could just like shake them and be like, just
yeah,
talk about it a little bit more,
just a little more. So I think that's kind of the point, but like
This is what watching Evangelion feels like.
okay, that he needs a little bit more than just a little bit of shaking there. He needs to go to full on therapy.
I think that was a little more, but Nudie, for all she is like, I think there's like a difference between like, even though she is like outwardly sociable, it does wonder if she's really like emotionally been willing to open up to anybody at all. And the answer is kind of, by this episode, the answer kind of turns out to be no. She hasn't really like, she doesn't really like to make herself very vulnerable, especially like in the first episode she showed up, she made her major show, and when we first met Angoramon, she kind of was pushed to desperation, but then she was constantly trying to hide how she was doing with like her two school friends, and she only eventually like caved and talked to Hito because he said he had a solution. And it was like, she doesn't really seem to like to show that kind of emotional vulnerability to other people. And then like she takes it to Hito and just, instead of like taking it to Angoramon and saying like, I don't like the fact that we're not talking, she just like goes to Hito and like dumps on him, and he's just sipping that cup like, okay, what do I have to do with this?
Yeah, like I can totally sympathize with sometimes like if you have, sometimes it's like with the person that you have a thing you want to talk about, if you just bring it up, that makes it more of a thing. So it's easier to talk about other people than it is to like confront it head on, or like you're afraid that like once you open that can of worms with the person, then like it might be, I don't know, like it's easier to not face it head on. So like it's totally relatable.
It's relatable, absolutely.
One day, Hiro is going to become the person that the engineers in the office go to talk through their programming troubles with, who never actually says anything but just nods his head.
Yep, that's why they call it rubber duck debugging, because he could just be a rubber duck.
Oh, that sent me back memories. Oh god.
Talk to the teddy bear.
Oh, also the moment where I was like, oh yeah, Gamamon is like absolutely just a toddler, is when they're at the cafe and Hiro is giving him food and then is cleaning him up and is like, how are you so sticky? Like, but also like I realized in these episodes that like he is a toddler, but he's also like the idealized version of a toddler, where he's like
much
well behaved, and or like I guess a little bit that he's more well behaved than the likes of Guilmon, but also that Hiro is smarter as a parent to like guide him towards a better path. But also he is more well, there's stuff like the fact that he can just eat endless chocolate without any concern for like his well-being. That is right. Like, oh man, that would be a fantasy. Just like give them endless chocolate and they'd be fine. That's a great fantasy.
There are very well-behaved toddlers. I think the image. It's not the average case, but there definitely are well-behaved ones. So.
Oh yeah,
we need an episode where Gamamon turns into a tablet kid and just won't stop watching YouTube. He's a big fan of Astra.
I think Gamamon is one of those who's just too fascinated by everything. So even the tablet might not be enough, I wonder.
Give Gamamon Minecraft. Give Gamamon Minecraft.
I don't think he's old enough for Minecraft. At least
I don't think
maybe
so.
I'm projecting too much of my own nephew. I'm like, he feels like a 3-year-old, and
Yeah.
I struggled to get my 3-year-old to play even the most basic games. We did. He enjoyed playing Untitled Goose Game and just honking endlessly. Anyway, yeah. So this episode, the big fluffy elephant in the room is that it's Ruli's second focus episode and
Yeah.
not Angorman's evolution.
Right. Although I do think the fact that it was tied to the fact that they're not emotionally open to each other is probably the big point here.
Mm-hmm. It can make sense that they need time to actually progress.
In a lore sense, it makes sense. In a meta sense, it's glaring, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess in a half lore, half meta sense, like Angormon feels the most already evolved of them. Like he's the most like knowledgeable and wise and physically large.
He's the Renamon of the season.
Yeah. Although that I was like, and in preparing for this episode, I was like, oh yeah, it's just like Renamon. Renamon also didn't evolve until late in the series. No, that was episode 6.
Yeah, that wasn't this late.
And we're episode 12 and she still hasn't.
Well, our evolutions are going much slower than most Digimon series in general.
Yeah.
And I do think it may have to do with the ratio dividing with like the Gamon evolution and anybody else evolving, but yeah, the ratio is a little glaring, especially because Hito and Gamon's number of evolutions is so far above everyone else's.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, yeah, okay.
Main character syndrome.
I mean, the ratio of 3 to 0 is infinity. So,
yeah.
but yeah, it is main character syndrome. It doesn't feel as egregious to me as it did in Adventure. Maybe that's just because Hero is new and refreshing. I don't know.
Imagine if they gave Takuya 3 evolutions. Oh wait, they did.
Oh goodness.
Do you think that we have to go through like with Gamamon's whole 3 evolution gimmick? Are we going to be seeing like different perfects and ultimate levels for him for all 3?
Boing.
Brief spoiler warning, we are going to talk about stuff that's only been revealed in the dim card that, who knows, it's iffy information, but it does indicate pretty strongly. So skip ahead a minute or two if you don't want that.
Boing. Yeah, the dim card conspicuously only had 1. I think it might be like a 0-2 case where like the lower forms have more variety, but you get more power scaling. It gets harder to maintain that.
I guess I remember seeing people like not complain, but like point out how kind of conspicuous it was that Kyoshiro just avoids the episode because he's respecting the train's manner mode and not answering his phone, which is funny. And I don't know. I guess it doesn't feel bad to me. I didn't really notice until looking back how like most episodes it's like, okay, Kyoshiro is busy, so he's not in the episode, or Ruli's busy, she's not in the episode. Like both of them. It's weird they're actually both active in the episode, but I think it felt like a good balance.
Hey, it's either that or send him off to the digital world and, oh, Kyoshiro can't be in this episode because he's on another continent.
Yeah, or it's Kyoshiro can't be in this episode because it's all about Hero forever and ever and ever. I guess the other part that frustrated me about the way Angorman was acting in this episode is that he, like, when he was commenting on her photos in the beginning, it was pretty condescending, and I was like, I don't know, I think he's in the wrong. And then later, he says he likes the photos, and I'm like, I get that his opinion could have changed, but it just feels like he's lying, considering he was like kind of condescending about it before. And now he's like, oh, I like your photos. And it's like, I don't know.
Isn't he like 10?
He's a Digimon. He's wise beyond his years.
What is age to a Digimon? I mean, I don't know. Gamon could be like 20 for all we know, but mentally could not get past 3.
Yeah. Well, moving on to the last episode of the bunch, episode 12, Chain Letter. Kyoshiro gets a suspicious chain letter spreading an exponentially growing Zasumon infestation throughout the city, and the kids meet up with Pokemon for more info and conclude that the weed is going to end human civilization altogether. Kyoshiro enacts a plan to gather all the Zasumon together, and Gamamon's undying love for chocolate unlocks a new laser gun Triceratops evolution, and the battle ends abruptly when an elder Zasumon appears to apologize and say that he only almost ended civilization because he was lonely, and he promises not to do it again.
Or so he claims.
Yes, like, I don't know what you describe his, because like the Digimon's eyes are just permanently in that shape, but it's definitely a menacing look.
There was killing intent there.
There was killing intent, and Hito noticed it too. Like it wasn't just like the framing. Like you saw his reaction. He was like,
he could
you
feel
sure
his
about that?
power level rising.
It was just like, you sure about that?
He could feel like, oh god, I can't buy another phone because that phone's gonna get broken too.
But like, that was very conspicuous. The fact that like you're not supposed to buy that explanation. Like,
yeah, it's interesting to note that Hiro noticed it, unlike with Dracomon, who presumably the three kids still think is their friend.
Right. But like Hito was just like, and like I think like Jakuan was like pretending, like attitude wise was trying to act all cute once he submitted, but like this one wasn't even hiding it. Like he just like was
Right.
glaring at like, yeah, I won't do it again. Yeah, sorry about that. You know, just like, I'm not convinced.
Yeah, like in universe, it feels a little bit awkward to like, this is a threat that is so big, you know, they literally they're talking about ending civilization, and then they're just like, yeah, I'm just gonna walk off and still be sounding kind of threatening while I do it. Like, I feel like you wouldn't accept that as a
Yeah,
reason to
yeah.
let it go, but
I mean,
Yeah.
this episode
Yeah.
is, I think, purposefully unresolved at the end. And it's following
Yeah.
on a chain of ideas that, like, I mean, we saw this in episode 9 and 10 too, that, like, these threats aren't really finished when things are wrapped up. These characters are still on the loose and can come back later. And the series seems to be creeping back towards that point of maybe you should have killed some of these Digimon.
I mean, the one interesting thing is, like, I got the impression they were perfectly willing, or I don't know about perfectly willing, but they were, like, ready to go as, like, aggressively as they needed to this episode until finally, like, the elder, like, finally said, like, stop, and all that. And I think it was kind of interesting that, like, in this situation, you know, if you're trying to be, like, a normal person who's not acting violent, even if you don't buy it, it's kind of like, what are you supposed to do then? Because it's like, he called a truce, and it's like, I don't buy this, but also, you know, technically speaking, you don't have justification to be violent anymore. So it's like, what do you do in this situation? It's like,
I mean, given the scale of the situation, I think what you do is you follow through and you fire off that Albion positron cannon that Wazen was charging up. But I don't think Hero's at the point where he could recognize the situation and respond like that yet. And probably something really bad is going to have to happen first before he realizes what's at stake when he lets somebody walk away.
especially because he's closer to the doormat than the aggressive type, you know? If we had, like, a protagonist like, I don't know, Takuya or Masaru, you know, I think this would have been, like, they totally would have, like, said, like, I'm not buying that. But, like, Hito is kind of a doormat, and he wants, like, he optimistically kind of wants to, like others. So it's kind of like, you can see why, even if he personally doesn't know if he buys it, he's kind of letting it slide.
Right. The Digimon are taking advantage of the fact that he's trying to
Right.
be merciful.
Right. The thing that I find awkward about that, though, is that, like, Hero's not the only one there. Like, even if he is kind of like a doormat in that regard, like, Kyosho and Ruli aren't to the same degree, and they're both okay with it.
But they're not like Takuya and Masaru either.
No,
Like, I don't
no.
think they're complete doormats, but like Hiro is. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know if they really like, especially Kiyoshiro is not exactly the most aggressive person in the room. You know,
No.
if you look at the other two of them, we don't really have a lot of very like aggressive people in this group, except maybe Jellymon.
Yeah, Jellymon's the most aggro, but even she's not actually the lead position. Hero's in a strange situation where he's kind of fallen into being the leader of the team, but he's also this doormat.
Yeah. Also, on retrospect, the last episode when Ruli was, you know, like wondering where Angoran was going off at night, I think she had reason to be concerned because last time that happened, Jellymon went and found Sister Monsiel and
Right.
set them all in a death race. So, I mean,
But one thing I do appreciate is like, and I think this is especially after coming out of Adventure 2020, when the world constantly was under threat, but I didn't feel a thing.
yeah.
I always say, whenever you say like the world might end, you know, it's very difficult to care because the world is always about to end in every kid's anime. It's very difficult to care unless you have some kind of personal stakes. Like, you need to know what personally matters to you and is going to be lost. So considering that we're bringing up the world ending thing early in the series already, it was kind of amusing how, of all things, they decided to have to simplify. Kind of like how you have to simplify tough topics to kids for kids shows. You have to simplify it for Gamma. It's like, well, if the world ends, you can't have chocolate anymore. And he goes like, ah!
And not even like if the world ends, you won't have Hero anymore. It's you won't have chocolate.
No, that's relatable. But yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting concept to take this like tiny and benign thing and like, okay, once you explain to the kids what an exponential curve is, which you know is frighteningly topical in the pandemic, that even the tiniest thing when exposed to an exponential curve can end the entire world.
So you're saying that this episode was a pandemic allegory?
Oh,
No, it wasn't. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
How did we feel about the chainmail nostalgia in this episode?
I mean, the unfortunate part is that's correct, because as soon as the topic came up, no less than 3 of my group chats started excitingly talking about the old days with chainmails and like personal stories of chainmails. So unfortunately, that's accurate. As is the part where they pointed out that people are going to make the problem worse by doing it just to see what happens, which I mentioned earlier. But the fact that we had like the YouTubers going like, let's confirm this on screen.
Well, I was actually a little bit confused by like the mechanics they laid out. Like, I think he says that it's in choosing to delete it that it replicates and spreads itself, but like I don't think it's actually true, because Gamamon destroys Hero's phone before he hits delete. And I guess you could say that the phone getting destroyed is a form of deletion, but then how does it spread from
Gamamon stepped on it, and that was probably enough force to...
But then electronics destroyed, so how do they spread from there? I don't know. I feel like it also doesn't really make sense that, like, why would you need the human's input to actually then spread? Like, it makes more sense if it just, when it gets on the phone, it automatically sends to all the contacts anyway, before they hit yes or no.
I mean, I think the implication is that if you sent the chain letter, it actually wouldn't spread because the trigger was hitting the delete button.
Right, but then how does Hero send it?
It hit the delete button. It hit the delete button right when Gamamon was stepping on it.
Oh yeah, in stepping on it, he hit the button. Yeah.
I mean, that's the part that like, oh no, like when I saw like them making the clickbait videos, I was like, oh no, that actually would happen.
But it seemed like those videos were actually informing people, or at least that was Pokemon's takeaway, that like now people know to...
Now people know, but you made the problem worse. It's like...
I guess.
It's like the question of like when you see somebody making like a really poisonous take on Twitter, like, yeah, you're dunking on it on Twitter and explaining why that's a bad take, but also you're boosting the take.
Yeah.
This takes me back to the good old days of people setting themselves on fire for clicks on YouTube. And I could see somebody making a clickbait YouTube video where they purposefully get bit by Zasomon.
I think it's interesting to like set up this like global stakes, huge potential event early on and clearly have it like lurking in the background later. And it's kind of like, well, because we're already speculating like Dracomon might team up with other Digimon or whatever and come back with a bigger threat. So it's like, what'll happen if this threat comes back in a bigger, stronger way?
I think this is the first time Hito and the others are going to have to start thinking about the fact that the bare minimum is not going to be enough. As an extension of what Toya said earlier, it's like just doing like the bare minimum to resolve the local incident. This is not a local incident anymore, you know?
Right. And I assume the eventual solution is to buy a rice cooker, send it to the digital world. But until we get there, I wonder how it's going to play out.
Well, even the rice cooker might not be enough if the Digimon can still get back to the human world, or if they're going to cause problems in the digital world. And I think the choice of Zasomon specifically is pretty purposeful here, because they are literally weeds, so the characters don't have to feel as bad about potentially murdering them.
Yeah, like they're like treated like shadow clones almost.
They're not like intelligent necessarily. The characters even mention that it's their survival instincts that's driving them.
Right. I also found it a little bit contrived that I would think that as soon as this stuff started happening in the dorm, that Kyoshiro and Hero's first thought would be to activate a digital field and isolate the Digimon, but they don't. Like, they talk to Pokemon, they learn how dangerous it is, and then Kyoshiro's plan is activate a digital field.
Yeah, that part was just like, it took you that long?
Also, the range of the digital field is confusing now.
Yeah, that I don't know.
It's like, it's a huge range. Also, it only contains one lake, which they don't show on screen, but it's pivotal to the plan. I don't know. But Wizengamon, however you pronounce it, so good. So good.
Yes, this is the best form of Gamamon.
I didn't know that his feet had guns too. Like,
it's even better. Gamamon is talking a little more. Like, as the episodes go by, he is starting to slowly get more eloquent. I kind of started catching on that.
I wonder if there's going to be like a pivotal moment where he says chocolate instead of champion, or, Choco instead of Psycho.
It'll be at the end of the series when he's going off to college.
In terms of communicating like what he's thinking and how he feels right now, like, there's only so much it's gonna get you, so he's starting to talk a little.
Yeah, I feel conflicted about the like we were talking about before about Hero's like hesitancy to pull the trigger, because I feel like that the way that action was set up in that scene, like there was, I guess, like too much going on, in that like his hesitancy is immediately negated by the big caned Elder Zasomon coming in, and it's like, we don't, like, now that we've talked about it, I'm like, okay, clearly what they're going for, that he hesitate to pull the trigger, and now whatever consequences come of letting these Digimon go free is gonna weigh on him. But I feel like in the moment I was kind of like, did the shot go off or not? Because we don't see like, oh, the like laser like deactivating or like something to show that like, oh, it didn't go off. Because in the moment I was like, I think he did fire. No, he didn't. I don't know.
He didn't. I don't think he did.
He didn't. We see the gauge charging up. It reaches the maximum and starts to glow. And Weizen asks him for confirmation, just says like Hero. And then right as Hero is like standing up and about to order him to fire, the Elder Zasomon jumps in.
Right. But it's like, it's timed such that it's like, there's an explosion. It's like, it's from the Zasomon. But when I first watched it, I was like, is that from the laser? Like, only in rewatching it and like stepping through and writing down what happened did I like clock that that's what happened. Because the first time I thought I didn't really get that distinction. So I don't know if it's not the most communicative storytelling, but eventually it won't just be subtext. It'll be apparent probably if he regrets or has to come to, face the consequences of letting Zasomon go.
Think we'll get like a League of Evil Digimon banding together?
I don't know if they'll band together like a solidified organization, because one thing I've noticed is that people who are very self-interested generally don't tend to have very strong alliances. But it'll definitely be enough for it to pose a problem. But on the other hand, there are probably allies you can count on now.
Yeah, there's a bunch of Digimon that they've befriended. I already posted this on Twitter. People may have seen it, but made like a little chart of like the status, because I was curious like what percentage of Digimon are left in what states, and it's it's most by now it's like about half the Digimon are on friendly terms and about half are neutral or suspicious.
It is really about half and half.
Yeah, I'm curious if they'll like Digimon like Majiramon and Yatagaramon. I don't know. If they come back and they're like, we're your friends now, I'll be kind of frustrated.
Throw open my mouth a little if that happens. Yatagaramon? No.
Yeah. I can magically talk now, and I'm your friend.
I think he can talk, and when he does talk, it will be horrifying.
Yeah, there's ways you could execute him talking, but it's like in a very like, oh, maybe it was a good thing. Like, oh, that he wasn't talking before. Like, it's gotta scare you.
Yeah, I mean, Sister Monsieur, like whatever she wants to do, I'll accept whatever she wants to do.
Oh, you became an Oshi already. Okay.
Yeah, as soon as she appeared, basically.
The Sister Monsieur Oshi. Okay.
Give Yatagaramon Dooftmon's voice actor from Cyber Sleuth, Wakamoto.
Oh no!
Just talk very, very slowly,
rolling his R's all the way down.
Well, those were 4 episodes. Let's get into some forward reviews.
At Gigaridramon said, "Where's the baddies though?"
At PDX Anime, still waiting on Simbar and Goramon. Do we know what the etymology for that is? Because I still don't think I do.
Oh.
Wikimon suggests that the etymology of Simbare and Goramon, which is pronounced Jinba and Goramon in Japanese.
We don't actually know the Japanese reading for this, so I don't know.
We don't?
I don't think we do. Or no, maybe we do. But anyway, Wikimon said for a very long time that Huckleberry Finn was legitimately the etymology for Huckmon, so I don't know how much I would follow.
It's suggesting it's a portmanteau from Jinbaori, a type of haori, one of the Japanese shortcoats without sleeves, and ballet. We're grasping here.
Yeah, at least, yeah, even Wikimon says possibly. It's, yeah.
Possibly.
Jimba.
The Huckleberry Finn thing was a justification for why the reference book still says that Hackmon's name is Huckmon.
It's not just the reference book, it's in the card game, too.
Yeah.
In Cyber Sleuth, it's Hackmon, though, right?
Yeah, I think official Tri subs are also Hackmon, so.
Yeah.
But then again, Crunchyroll subs, and I thank them for this, have had a policy of very often just completely ignoring whatever the hell the official romanization is, and I thank them because it makes watching, whenever they do this, it makes watching Digimon much better. So
that's just for Tri, right?
No, Adventure in Zero 2 on the European version of Crunchyroll also just like casually disregard it.
Okay, but not Adventure 2020 and Ghost Game.
Yeah, for some reason.
I guess Ghost Game hasn't come up with. We don't have a legacy of or Jamon to do.
Yeah. But no, thankfully, if the official Crunchyroll subs for Adventure had actually said Picklemon, I think I would have actually like thrown something. So. Well,
obviously Piccolo is a reference to the vegetable that the Dragon Ball character is based on. Well, anyway, next forward review from Andy Lucas OE. I liked, not loved. Fair.
From at Meghanadramon. Kyo stole my heart.
Should point out there's a heart symbol after that.
Yeah, does that count as a word? Do emojis count as words in forward reviews?
I think the love from Kiyoshiro manifested that heart.
At Austin LC23, disorienting / hilarious / amazing / meh.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't have. It's an interesting. I agree with a lot of those adjectives, but in different orders, corresponding to different episodes. Okay, because I thought the last one was the most chaotic and fun.
Yeah, I went into these expecting episode 9 to be like my big one, but no, I liked 12 the best.
Yeah.
I think 12 also ended up being my favorite, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, Matthias FV08 said, each time less scary. Yeah.
Yeah, we're a long way from Pumpmon. At Dak and Jackster said, world of pure imagination.
I was I was like, where's the Willy Wonka connection here? I'm confused. I guess is there an obvious reference that I'm missing?
I have nothing to say here.
No, I'm not. Jack, you're gonna have to explain that for me.
Yeah.
Like, I get the reference. I'm not sure why you made it. Did I
Yeah.
miss the Candy Factory somewhere in these episodes? Because that would have been really good.
Well, there's chocolate.
Oh, there's a lot of chocolate.
Yes, okay.
There's
Okay,
a
there's
lot
lots
of
of chocolate.
chocolate.
We got it.
We got it.
We are the cyber sleuths.
We need to get Gamamon a golden ticket. This should be an episode prompt. I want to send this to Toei as a writing prompt for an episode. Gamamon gets loose in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory.
Oh no, he's gonna eat all of the stuff and then get all he's gonna suffer all the consequences all the kids get.
Yeah, what would his karmic punishment be?
He's gonna get all of them, every single one of them.
Yeah, he's the one that wins. At Reza W, I apologize if I pronounce your username wrong, but more chill before plot.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't quite mind I enjoy the Ghost game premise enough that it's earned enough goodwill with me that in a normal season it would be kind of like we're 12 episodes in and we have such vague hints of plot. I'd be kind of frustrated, but
the characters are entertaining me, and I think it's very easy for me to accept even very minimal amounts of plot because the characters are entertaining. And I know right now we actually have even less than Adventure had at this point, but even then, it's not like Adventure has a lot of plot. So it's kind of if the character narrative is carrying it, I think that's fine. But that's me.
The premise is kind of wearing on me. I'm looking for the hook. Where's the big turnaround going to happen? Is this are we going to hit episode 26 and suddenly there's a central antagonist driving the whole thing? Or how slow is this burn is the question that's on my mind.
Right.
yeah.
Although I can accept a pretty fairly slow burn as long as it doesn't leave too much dangling. So it's just kind of don't bite off more than it can chew, I guess.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of in such a mood comparing it to Digimon stuff we've gotten recently, all three of the most recent things, Tri, Atmon, and Adventure 2020, and it's for each one of those, I feel like the comparison is very favorable. Not very favorable, but compared to Adventure 2020, very favorable in terms of this is hitting all the notes that I missed in Adventure 2020, and
Yeah.
also it's not hitting some of the things that were the highlights of Adventure 2020, but I enjoyed the things it is hitting more. And compared to Atmon, I feel like Atmon had more hints at overarching plot early on that in the end I didn't actually enjoy that much. So I'm I could actually lose those moments of Atmon and still enjoy it just as much. And I feel that's where it's coming from. I don't need I forget what that Digimon's called. The one that is the early villain in Atmon that what's her name?
Cameramon?
No, not Cameron. I like Cameron.
Myanmar?
Yeah.
She's cute though. but no, I mean Amon is actually probably up there on one of the more focused Digimon series, but even then it did have things that didn't actually go anywhere. And I think it's a much lower amount than your average, but at the same time it definitely was not free from superfluous elements, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
This period does feel to me like that arc in actually in both Tamers and Frontier where prior to the Devas and their servants being introduced in Tamers, the characters are just kind of bouncing around encountering different Digimon and setting the groundwork for the characters. And then in Frontier, prior to the Dark Legendary Warriors showing up, again, it's more of an episodic.
Savers is like that too. It's all doing government fetch quests until episode 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically until the digital world becomes the big driving point.
I feel all those, when I compare it to those early stretches of those shows, I feel I really enjoyed some of the things those shows were doing. I liked in Frontier that we were exploring parts of the digital world while that was happening. I liked in Tamers how it wasn't, even though it was kind of Monster of the Week, but the character narrative was not episodic. Renamon and Rika split up for multiple episodes in a row, and things Gargamon evolved and then had consequences and it didn't want to evolve. So there were things like that carried through the episodes
I mean, I'm not going to mince words. This is definitely on the slower end. If you were to line up all the Digimon series next to each other on the slower end, I'm still on the fence on whether this is. I am probably going to say this one is slower, but I'm still on the fence compared to Sabers, because that first 11 episodes of Sabers is really infamously polarizing. So
Yeah, I didn't like them, and I came out liking Sabers as a whole by the end.
yeah, I mean, I'm on the camp who actually had no problem with it from the beginning, but I completely understand why people on board with it, because there is no clear antagonist for a whole 11 episodes, or anything, or any direction for a whole 11 episodes, actually.
Yeah, it's hard for me to extract feelings from that because I'm like, I was so enamored by everything Sabers was doing in the beginning that I was like, I love everything. I'm eating all this up. It was also like the first time I came back to Digimon after a long period of I'm too cool for this stuff. So like I was like, oh man, I'm loving everything. And then like I could have, I don't know. And also like I like now looking back on it, I really like the concept of the quote unquote evil partners, or the like, you know, like humans and Digimon kind of like mutually benefiting each other in weird scenario kind of ways. But it's not all to say that like I find that Ghost Game, that I don't find Ghost Game frustrating in that it's lacking in those elements. It's more just that like it's doing a different thing. It's doing a thing that's like focused on these like episodic spooky stories, and I think that's a cool direction for it to be taking. It's not the kind of like threaded plot narrative that we're kind of used to, but I feel like we just saw how that was technically what was happening in Adventure 2020, but not in a satisfying way. So I'm like,
this is a very experimental series, actually, when you think about it.
Mhm.
And I think perhaps maybe one of the reasons why Adventure 2020 being so pseudo-episodic-ish, in a sense, was that it was doing a formula that had been done several times in Digimon before, but like with significantly less happening in it at all. And meanwhile, this is actually a pretty experimental premise. And I think like it has to kind of play it safe right now because the franchise is about to die. Again. So
Well, it was about to die, but
it's not, yeah, it's closer to not dying than it was before. But,
it's in its most like, can it exist as something that's not just adventure phase?
right. This is like a very, very uncertain time for it right now. So I think like I kind of get it, but I'm not expecting the pace to pick up too much. And I also understand they said several times like the reason why they want to do it this way is because of accessibility, actually.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to get more people into the franchise to be able to jump on as easily as possible. So they're like really playing it safe to prevent the lockout. So I kind of get that, like the things you need to do for that. Okay, sure.
I'm not overly concerned about the pacing, but like it took Tamers didn't have a like unifying central thread until about episode 13 or 14, and we're on episode 12 right now with Ghost Game.
Another thing about Tamers is that that doesn't hit as hard now, but back then it was kind of sustaining itself off the novelty of this is an adventure. And if you actually look at the earlier episodes of Tamers in a nutshell, the pacing wise, it doesn't actually hold up as well as it used to. So
yeah, for a lot of people who come into it recently and they're like, there's just like this long stretch where they're not really doing much in a park, and it's like I guess that it's hard for me to see it that way, but I guess so.
It's like my friend when I was doing the first episode marathon, like my friend just got like locked out after the first episode. She's like, I don't know what's going on. There's just like, I don't know what they're going for. I don't know what's going on. And, you know, it's very easy for us to look at a retrospect. We all know the series like the back of our hands now. We know what happened to the plot. And at the beginning, you know, the novelty of it's not adventure was such a like sustaining aspect of it. But right now, and especially compared to other Digimon series that have kind of ironed out the concept of pacing in the early episodes, much so, it doesn't actually stick as well as it used to.
Well, I think the thing that's pretty different about Ghost Game and a little bit of Atmon compared to some of the more classic Digimon seasons is that like, and Sabers has a bit too, of like they have more novelty in their premises. Like
right.
Ghost Game, it's like each episode, like I feel like you can like Tamers until the Devas come into it, like there's no, it's like Digimon are appearing in the real world, and there's novelty in the fact that it's not adventure, and it's like characters who, you know, like are aware of Digimon being a thing, and it's like about like what if Digimon manifests in real life, but like it doesn't really lend itself to a bunch of episodic premises like apps are going haywire or ghosts are going haywire do. So
right.
I think Abmon shows how like you can have those episodic premises going through the entire series, but still having, you know, like plot pulling you forward through it.
Like Sabers was a heavy-handed political allegory from like beginning to end. So like after a certain point, it had to stop with the episodic because just like you cannot make a narrative about like xenophobia, concentrated xenophobia, to the point that my friend even said like it feels like they overshot their target audience on that one because it's just like so much of it is so political that you need to have experience directly that it doesn't hit. But it's like that is like a narrative that just does not work on an episodic series, and like several things in the earlier series just it wouldn't work in an episodic series.
Yeah.
Here's my threshold. If we get to episode 27 and there's still no consistent antagonist, I will probably have lost interest by then, because this happened to me with Vanguard G. We got through 2 cores and it was only in 27 that we finally got a core antagonist.
Oh.
And then it went on that one was 48 episodes for the season, and then by the end it turned out that antagonist didn't matter at all. He was just leading into something bigger.
Yeah, I mean, Kingdom Hearts, the first game, doesn't have an antagonist until like the very end of the game.
No, Maleficent is there right from the beginning.
Oh, okay, you're right. Maleficent's there the whole time. Yeah, okay.
And she kind of has to be for the pacing of that game, because like if the final boss just showed up like Super Nintendo style at the 11th hour, nobody would be happy with that.
But Sora wasn't really aware of Maleficent. No, because I guess
Leon and everybody is warning about him right from the first or warning him about her.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Although he figures out very late that Riku is working with her. I don't think he knows that the two are working together until Neverland. Sorry, Aster, we're totally locking you out of the conversation here.
It's okay. I roughly follow. I like to keep up with things even when I don't play it myself, because otherwise I lose track of conversation. So I actually try to be a little nosy.
Well, we should actually get to the comments and questions. So first off, PDX Anime said, "For me, Angormon continues to be the best part of the main cast. I love how he has this like Batman / Nick Fury. Oh gosh, he is Nick Fury. Oh, Nick Fury pulse on the Digimon in the neighborhood, making connections and allies to spread an information network as seen in episode 11. I think he and Willie are a great pair, but like I've said a couple times in Discord, my favorite part of Angormon is this cool Uncle Iroh energy he gives off. He is so knowledgeable and wise, and the way he drops those philosophical last thoughts at the end of each episode are the things I look forward to. He is number 1.
I'm calling him Nick Furry now.
So, if you remember in Atmon, they had like the words of wisdom, or however you want to call it, at the end of the that at the end of every episode, and sometimes it's relevant, sometimes it's just trying to be like weird and quirky. Inazuma 11 also had this. At the end, they would have like some kind of like soccer proverb at the end, and sometimes it's more actually like a moral lesson, sometimes it's just totally there for fun. And I think like it's like depending on which kid series it is, it's like their version of like the good old like Pokemon Senyu kind of thing, where like in the original Japanese version of the Pokemon anime, I think in the first series, I don't know if they do this anymore, but like Professor Oak would come out and like have some kind of like poem to say about the episodes of it. And like not every kid show does this, obviously, but like every time I see something like this, it's kind of funny. But usually it's like a dedicated segment. But here it's just like Angormon will just like close the episode with his own dialogue because he's poetic.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's no like he's not doing a specific Japanese poetry form when he.
No, he's just being funny.
Right, it's generally poetic, and yeah, I don't know.
This is a specific kids show trope that doesn't get localized a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I would appreciate a lot more if it was a dedicated segment. And as is, I feel like it's a little weird how like it keeps happening and then really keeps being like, "What'd you say?" And he's like, "No." Or like she keeps like missing what he's saying, and it's like because he's just saying it to himself.
You can't drop philosophy on a bunch of middle schoolers. They will just goes in one ear, out the other.
I guess what I don't like about it is that like it's supposed to be these deep philosophical thoughts, but they often feel like vacuous and empty, and it's like it feels pretentious in the sense that it's trying to be deep and philosophical, but it's not actually that deep. And I get that it's not important to the episode, so it's like Aster was saying, it's like
it's a total kids show trope.
Little bonus things that aren't important, so it's not actually trying to be deep and philosophical. But my kind of like BS radar goes off when I hear things that are phrased like they're supposed to be deep and philosophical. I don't know.
Poetry without violence is just sophistry.
I think it's just like something you get used to when you've seen enough Japanese kids shows, but like unfortunately this is not something that we tend to be very used to because it so did not get localized.
No, it usually gets cut out in order to speed through the end credits as fast as possible.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I wonder if those segments from early Pokemon were cut out, because I watched it in Japanese on Japanese Netflix a couple of years back and don't remember them. But I remember there was like an equivalent of the Poke Rap. I forget what it, like Shiratori.
Okay, yeah, it's the actual segment is called the Professor Oak's Pokemon Lecture, and then he does a Senyu at the end of it.
Okay. Oh, I see. It looks like it started in episode 61, which isn't. I didn't get that far when I was watching on Japanese Netflix. Well, in any case, Garyjimon said, in the first arc, of episodes, I congratulate Ghost Game for having different solutions to each Digimon hero and co-fought, but I feel like all 4 of these villains were all solved in the same way. Hopefully in Digimon Formula episode 13 we'll shake up the plot because it's starting to feel a bit repetitive, especially since we watched all these back-to-back for the podcast rather than weekly. Still enjoying it, but variety is the spice of life. Also wish Battlegamon fought Weedmon so we get an adult joke slipped into the series, hashtag 420, hashtag blaze it.
I think they were avoiding that on purpose.
Well, I mean, the weed, like, I mean, okay, Zasomon in English, or I mean, in at least in the card game, is Weedmon. So,
Yeah.
but so the Japanese term Zaso just means weed, but does Zaso have the marijuana
No.
connection? Okay.
I don't think so, no.
I'm not in tune with Japanese drug culture.
Yeah, so how much do you know about marijuana in Japan? Actually, that's a sore subject because
I don't think we should go
We
there.
should- if we go-
We are not going to go there.
This will go bad very fast.
Yeah, for people who aren't aware, marijuana in Japan is not like a funny, lighthearted subject. It's like a huge criminal offense that
You will lose your job over it. Like if you will, like your entire career will go down over it.
like if you're a voice actor, your career will be completely over, and also you'll be dubbed out of everything because it can't even exist anymore. Like
Yeah, it's
it's a whole can of worms that is not great, to put it lightly.
I know about kusa being used as slang for laughter.
grass.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah, I guess.
because when you type out the little W's
It looks like grass.
for warao,
Right,
it
right.
looks like grass. So they started typing just kusa,
Yeah.
but which is also a word for weed. And
Well, CC Chikado asked, how long do you think it will take them to actually develop a plot, or do you think Ghost Game is going to be like adventure and be mostly episodic?
yeah, this is the question on everybody's mind.
But the question is also, what do you define as a plot? Because we're defining it right now between us as there is an antagonist, but then like some people are defining like the question about Gammon's existence or the existence of Pokemon and Bakuman as like part of a plot. So it's just like, I mean, the question is, I guess, like at what point are we going to see raised stakes, or like there's so many questions on like what do you call a plot, I guess.
Yeah, I guess in terms of my own personal, like Toya set out his own personal, like when he'll be invested, and I feel like it's not so much tied into a villain. It's just like something beyond, something that makes you want to tune in each week beyond the episodic ghost stuff,
Right.
And like
Hmm.
we've gotten a glimpse of that, like when we've gotten like Clockmon reappearing, but I feel like we're a long ways away from like that being the through line.
I mean, my macro level question of like what is a plot has to address like it deals with the core issue of a series, like the big picture of what is going on.
The thematic statement of the series, I guess you could say.
Like if you apply it to movies, the plot of Beauty and the Beast is about who are you on the inside and who are you on the outside. And when you look at Digimon, like one of the issues is that some of our seasons arguably don't have plots because they don't have big themes that they're trying to address, and they're very inconsistent in what they're talking about.
It's okay, you can say Tamers.
Shh, no, I wasn't gonna name names. Okay. Yes, Tamers the big picture changes from episode to episode. All right. That's it doesn't really know what it wants to be about, but it wants to do it well. And it's trying very hard. But like plot for a TV series is something that has to be set out on a grand scale like that. The same for a video game.
Yeah.
This series, I think we can say it doesn't have a plot because it doesn't have a big picture yet of like what is Ghost Game about. If I ask you what is Digimon Cross Wars about,
Very easy, actually.
I would say it's actually about leadership and what it means to be a leader.
Well, I mean, I think every Digimon series has more than one theme. I think it's very, if you're going to try and reduce it to one, that's like super oversimplification. But like generally speaking, you want to have, even if you have multiple themes, they should generally cover the whole series. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just said like Saber is a total political tract, and there's so many things you can unpack about that political track, but generally speaking, every single part of the series ties into that in some sense.
Yeah. So how long do we think it will take?
I mean, like I said, on one hand, I do want to say like by now, I think at least for the pacing wise, I think this is has basically set. I'm not going to expect this to go very quickly overall, but it is drip feeding us stuff, so I'm not going to say. I don't think it's not giving me the impression of the fact that it's going to hold all the way over to episode 48, and then finally we get plot at the end. It hasn't come off to me as something like that. It's just going much slower than usual, but then at the same time, I have to remember that Saber just completely, utterly escalated at episode 12 and then just went completely dramatic for in only 4 episodes. So,
and with how vague the episode previews have been, I mean, they could just sneak in the plot episode into something that we think is going to be unimportant.
Right.
Yeah.
Atmon was great at that. Really good at that.
I'm pretty confident actually about when the plot's going to kick in, and based on this lengthy, really, I think, good conversation we've been having, and the fact that this podcast isn't going to release until after episode 13 comes out, it's definitely going to happen in episode 13 to just make this whole conversation irrelevant.
It's called Murphy's Law or what, like, or I don't know what to call it, but like once you start talking about it, it's like it's not going to happen, it does happen.
Complaining about it on the internet is guaranteed to make it happen, right?
Yeah. The episodes have to have content that put us. The episodes that come right after we record a podcast always have to put us in the most awkward situation.
My serious forecast is that I think the turnaround will have happened before episode 26.
The halfway point.
Before or on.
Yeah.
And it could happen as early as episode 14 or 15, but that's like being optimistic in my give it to me now.
Like I said, it is coming and it is drip feeding, and it may not even be like a sudden turnaround. It may be like you get bits and pieces of it more and like have to like put it together.
Yeah, for me, like I feel like the turning point I'm tying more to the evolution stages than episode count, because like I feel like one thing, like a pattern in some of the Digimon seasons is that I think in most of the seasons, like it's around like when they're evolving to champions or adults, it's when it's the episodic stuff, and then it becomes more the larger plot when they go beyond those stages. And I feel like that's one of the places where like Adventure 2020 felt flat, is that like their stages are getting higher and higher, but like the stakes still feel the same throughout the whole time, kind of. And I feel like part of the like, oh, well, now we're getting stronger and we're doing bigger things that mean more each episode is what makes it feel like the tension's building and it leads to a satisfying season.
And again, like right now, Hiro and his friends have a personality where they only care about what's in their immediate vicinity. But we just got an episode where they were for the first time they were forced to care about something outside that.
Right.
Yeah. But I feel like with the rate that they're like the fact that we're on episode 12 and one of the three main characters hasn't had an adult or champion evolution, I feel like it could actually be quite a while until we're
really
considering them going to a stage beyond that. So
it's all on you, Duty. Hurry up and get your emotions in order.
They're going to delay that as long as possible. It's going to be painful.
Well, Austin LC23 asked, now that we're 12 episodes into the series, how have your overall thoughts and expectations changed? And how would you compare it to other Digimon series at this point? How do you feel about, and also are in particular curious how we feel about Ruli and Angoramon? They really like the unique circumstances of their partnership.
It's interesting. That's all I'm going to say. It definitely has been both what I expected, not what I expected, but it's hitting all the nice points of how I enjoy my week. My friend currently looks forward to it as the best part of every week because I guess every other anime this season has been disappointing them. So
I feel like in terms of viewing it as an antidote to Adventure 2020, I feel like it's totally lived up in that sense, and that like the stuff that it's leaned into is the stuff that I felt particularly parched after Adventure 2020 there's no conjunction to use there. Anyway, so I think in that sense it's lived up to what I have expected so far, but like it's definitely getting to a weird point where I'm like the shape of the season is coming out to be pretty different from other Digimon seasons, and I'm kind of like the more that shape like differs, the more I'm kind of like questioning or worrying. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It's just like it's making me like, is this going in a good direction?
I do feel like, and I think this is one criticism that I have right now that I don't think is going to go away for the rest of the series, just by like kind of getting a feel for its writing overall style, and it's also not make or break for me. It's just like one, like how I said when we recorded for the first episode, like things you like in it will maybe represent the rest of the series, but things you don't like about it may also be representative of the rest of the series. So like it's just one of the things that is characteristic of the series. But I do feel like it is a little too willing to make its situations a bit obviously contrived compared to other things that I'm used to. And I think it's because Digimon has, and I don't think it's a fault of this series compared to other kids shows I watch. Actually, I think it's specifically because Digimon was just so historically good at not making overly contrived feeling situations that this one sticks out a little bit. But that's just kind of my ongoing feeling about it. But it's like its overall writing style, I guess. So it's like, good and bad. Again, this is not make or break for me.
This series is less of an antidote to 2020 for me and more like mouthwash. Like I'm still trying to get the taste out, every time the characters, like, there's a Digimon attacking and they look at their partners, I'm still expecting Be the Winners to kick in.
Oh, I think I don't remember if it was the last episode or the one before that, but like when I think at the time we recorded that episode, you were like, oh yeah, like in Avenger 2020, they would just look at each other and be like, Taichi, Agumon, and then evolve. And then like in the episodes that came out after we recorded that, like that's totally what Hero and Gamamon just do. And I'm like,
Yeah.
like because the animation, especially like the evolution animation, is basically just the two of them looking at each other and then they evolve and then.
Although, like, I do feel like the one tricky part that they have, especially with Hiro and Gamamon, and probably why so many people are like so focused on the other duos right now, is that they kind of wrote themselves a little into a corner because, like, Gamamon being so childlike and having a very difficult time expressing himself means it's very difficult for him to have a very nuanced conversation with Hiro right now.
Mm-hmm.
The Guillemon problem.
And so it makes it very hard to like elaborate on that because even for like Digimon partner standards, he has a very difficult time speaking about what he's thinking.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's like it smells similar to Adventure 2020 in that regard, but it's like there's a logical reason why.
Especially when you compare it to like what happened with the Kyoshiro and Jellymon during their evolution episode.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm still feeling good about the series.
Yeah, I am too.
Yeah, I feel like the part that makes me excited so far is that, like, the actual premise of the episode can be exciting and fun in and of itself enough to carry.
Yeah.
Like the chaos of the Zasumon was fun. The 2 episodes last chunk, the Jellymon debut episode and the go-kart death murder race were so fun that I was like, I mean,
you know, the series is really cute.
It is.
It's really cute. Like, not just Gamamon, but like the art style is cute. The atmosphere is cute. The interactions between the characters is cute. This is like, that's like the one word that is like almost standout. It's very cute. I think like after all is said and done, I can't fault it for the fact that it's super cute.
yeah.
This will make some people mad, but this series is very merchandisable. Like, it is much easier to like do plushies, acrylic keychains, buttons, that kind of thing when the series is already in this kind of very abstracted, adorable style.
And I mean, maybe that's a good thing in the series that has historically been very bad at making merch.
I think it's good. I just know that there's some people that would absolutely incense.
Yeah, we'll see if they capitalize on it well. But yeah, Andy Lucas OE said the tamers, for lack of a better word, seem to be becoming more and more connected to their Digimon and now calling out attacks that they somehow innately know now. Are the Digivices a bridge between the two, like the D-Arcs, and what effects are the way can you see occurring?
Well, I think we established that is basically like kind of solidifying the connection between like the emotions of, you know, materializing and among other things.
Yeah, Gamamon is a mood ring for Hero.
I think it's like learning a skill in a Tales game. Like that one video clip going around of Zelos going, Demon Fang, I'm a genius, double Demon Fang. They just spark the skill after they attack enough.
I feel in general feel very conflicted about the whole like the kids calling out the attack names, because on the one hand I think it's kind of cool, especially in, I guess it was in episode 12 we got I guess they do like a special like flash and animation when they learn the skill, like it's the first time this like they know the name. And when it happens to Kyoshiro in episode 12, he does like a whole like my silent pain that I'm enduring. Like, he does like a whole pose that's like very human. It's like this is fantastic. I love it. And so I like how like when each of them gets their little moment, it's a way to like showcase their personality. But the actual concept, I don't know. Like, I guess it's showing like the bond between the two of them, the fact that they get this like kind of psychic connection. But like, I don't know, and it shows them the tamers being participants in the battle in a way because they're like tactically calling out the attacks. But it feels a little bit contrived to think of the Digimon like not knowing what to do, or, like not knowing they have the ability to do an attack until the kid calls it out. I don't know.
It's the inverse of Pokemon. Instead of your Pokemon learning the moves, your human has to learn them.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's definitely the vibe they're going for with the Vetalbrace that's connecting them in that way. But it's like, are we supposed to actually believe that like the Digimon would not be able to do those attacks unless the tamer called it out? I don't know.
We'll see. Maybe we'll get an explanation for that too.
Yeah, maybe.
It feels like the kind of thing where like, you know how in Gundam they had like the new type flashes occurring as a visual effect where a character would notice something coming at them before it was actually coming and they'd like psychically know to move out of the way, and then later on that would be commented on and discussed by the characters. That feels like the kind of thing here.
Hey, shout out to the person who called Gamamon the Strike Gundam of Digimon.
He's modular. He has different forms.
I guess I could also really buy it if it was like they can do like the Digimon can like fully articulate and like can fight as an entity, but like a special move, like some kind of like finisher special move is the kind of thing that needs to be like triggered.
Yeah.
It's just that we're so used to Digimon, like in every other form of media, like being able to, like, the special moves are kind of commonplace. Like they're not
Right.
like, it's not like, I don't know, like there's not like the basic stuff and then special moves that are like a higher level.
Yeah, like my friend was comparing when we were talking about the fact that like the special moves didn't have stock footage in Adventure 2020. My friend said but I was looking forward to the stock footage, and the way he described it was what was it, like a wrestling special, like the thing you hype yourself up. It's not about the fact that it's like the fact that there's a structure to it is what gets you excited about it.
Well, next question. So Meg Hangemon asked, since Digimon were created by a computer virus in this continuity, and Gamamon says, you give me bad vibes to the evil Digimon, do you think he could be an artificial Digimon, quote-unquote, antivirus program created by Hero's dad? We still don't know what he was doing before Hero found the Digivices in episode 1. He must have just been existing, waiting for someone to connect to his bracelet. His reaction to Clockmon and the Dark Evolution Clockmon foresaw makes me think there's more to Gamamon than we have seen, and definitely agree on that part. And Toss and Black Godamon opening portals to send Digimon back out of the world, and the seemingly untraversable digital gate for humans, and I think Hero's dad will be revealed to be some kind of antagonist soon. Gamamon will continue to become more human-like through his friends, while Hero's dad becomes more computer-like. That is a very specific theory.
That's an interesting idea.
It's an interesting idea.
I think, though, like, the idea of Gamamon being somehow artificial or being modified or something done by Hero's dad, I think feels more and more likely.
Yeah. Oh, we'll see.
Yeah, I think that this could happen. Well, that specifically, the idea of Gamamon being artificial is something that a lot of us are already on the train for, I think.
Yeah.
But with Hero's dad, I mean, he has to be important in some way. And being an antagonist is kind of it would be a natural manifestation of the like subtle tension we've gotten over Hero's home life in the previous episodes. I don't know if it will happen. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball.
I mean, there's also many different ways to be an antagonist. Like you can be like the villainous antagonist or the uncaring antagonist or the person who thinks they're doing good things, but actually it's not considering the consequences. And there's like, if you want to say antagonist, there's like so many different definitions of that word.
Yeah.
It's hard to speculate on.
Yeah.
I have words for Dumbbell Senki fans right now, but I'm going to spoil that series really bad if I do. So I will not say anything. But if you have seen that series, you'll know what I'm talking about.
I think the idea that like Gamamon being this like gut check of things giving him bad vibes, like that is I like the theory of that being like tied into like whatever purpose maybe Gamamon was created for. It's an interesting idea. But yeah, Hero's dad's role playing into it. Like I feel like if we're leading to something more about Hero's dad, like I feel like we haven't built up enough about Hero's relationship with his dad. Like we know like loose picture, but I feel like to turn that into like actually being an antagonist, and there's still plenty of time to build in more backstory there. But like
actually, my current theory is the main antagonist may actually be the narrator.
Oh.
Just because, first of all, like, so far, I mean, I don't, this part alone wouldn't have done it, but the fact that they got, like, a fairly famous actor to be the narrator, but the fact that he has no other role in this series other than being the narrator, which hasn't happened in a Digimon series before, unless, I mean, the only closest thing is Nozawa was the narrator on Adventure 2020, but they were obviously picking her because she was Guilmon on back in Tamers.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, they picked a famous actor who has two ghost-related roles, and you're about to say, oh, haha, then it's just a ghost joke, but both of them are antagonistic. And also there was that recent preview, I may have to link it so Jeff can put it in the show notes, where he started acting really suspicious. Like, the way he was delivering it started acting suspicious. So I don't know, I just thought that would be kind of funny if there's, like, a meta twist where, like, the guy who turns out to be like the main antagonist of the series was the guy who was narrating off the story the whole time, which is kind of like a spoiler for Adventure in Zero 2, like a twist on the plot twist at the end of Zero 2 that the narrator was talking about the whole time.
Yeah.
I would also like this series to pull a Princess Tutu.
Oh yeah, there's a Princess Tutu thing, right?
That was a great moment.
Wait, is that a big spoiler for Princess Tutu?
I don't know if I'd call it a spoiler. The series kind of lays it on thick that it's going to happen.
Yeah, the series, and it's just that sort of thing that they reveal it, but it's so obvious it's coming.
Like Princess Tutu has the narrator character called Drosselmeyer, who you actually see like his character design right from the first episode narrating things.
Oh, King Drosselmeyer.
And then you find out he exists in universe as a character, and then you're like, oh, okay, so naturally he's going to become important to the plot. And sure enough, by the end, he basically is one of the antagonists.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that like the previews like hype up the scare factor by a large degree, and it's like if there's a plot relevant reason for that, that would be really cool.
Yeah, because there was that PV. He suddenly like he seems to be awfully enthusiastic about the terrible things that are going to happen.
Right, like taking glee in the terror.
It's in a way that seems a little weirder than just your average person hyping up the episode. There's something about that. I don't know. It just gives me a vibe. It gives me bad vibes.
Yeah. So yeah, here's that. Not so sure about, but there are straws to grasp at out there. Final question from Dak and Jackster. They said, really enjoying this early stretch of episodes, developing the characters and their relationships, gradually teaching us how the world works, and the episodic scenarios have been fun and varied. The focus on the series arc has been generally light. Which Digimon series do you each feel had the best balance being episodic and leaning into its story arcs? And by extension, what are your general personal preferences on this balance? Do you like a rich, extensive Last Airbender or a lean to the point Legend of Korra?
So the thing is, the only series that really attempted to be episodic are only Atmon, Adventure 2020, and this. Like, everything else was like straight up continuous story arc before then. So we only really have 3 to choose from.
You mean, are you comparing the whole series, or because I think this? I think we could look at like because the early stretches of most of the seasons are fairly episodic.
Yeah, but like that's a kind of a given with a series,
Yeah,
I think. Yeah. But like ones that actually decided to make it kind of really tried to lean on it was like probably Atmon, Adventure 2020, and this one are like really the only ones.
I wonder, the question of whether or not a series is like episodic, it's really an issue of like, well, to what degree can these episodes be seen out of order, and which chunks of episodes can be viewed out of order, which I guess is a consequence of the television as like a medium. But for me, I liked how Cross Wars, even though it has an ongoing story arc and 2 very clearly divided seasons, we do not speak of Hunters, and like within those 2 arcs of the original series and then Death Generals, you have the ongoing fight against Bagramon, and then all of these sub-antagonists that show up for individual episodes that are like either part of the Empire or are another faction. And then as those sub-antagonists are kind of reigning over those individual episode blocks, within those blocks you can watch a lot of the bits of them independently.
Toya, the really funny thing is my friend just really got into Cross Wars. Like, she totally like fell hook, line, and sinker, and she just binge watched it. She actually would say the opposite to you. Like, really? She says we were talking about why it didn't do well with the kids, and she said like it's inaccessible. Like it's difficult to follow. It's difficult for even me to follow. If they didn't have the alliances map at the beginning of every episode, I may not have been able to keep track of this. It's like if you're not marathoning this instead of watching it week to week, it's totally easy to fall off. Like she said like it's probably one of the most inaccessible of all of them. Like she would completely disagree with you on this. So I don't know about that. But then, we want to talk about what's episodic. Like, every adventure episode had to end in a battle. So something had to cathartically end. But then, like, how confused are you getting if you're not keeping track? That answer would still be very high.
Yeah, I guess, like, kind of baked into our assumption, like, even the least episodic Digimon series is still more episodic than, I don't know, like, Western prestige TV or something. Like, there's still like an enemy of the week that they defeat, or I guess not in every single episode, but generally. And it's just a matter of like the character arcs carrying through the evolutions they have unlocked.
Like even in 02, like which is one of the least episodic up there because it definitely has the character narrative is like super dependent on prior episodes. When they got to the famous episode 23, which is probably one of the first Digimon episodes to not have a like major Digimon battle at all. No evolution sequence, no major Digimon battle. Apparently, like the executives were worried about this. That like we're about to put out an episode that is just nothing but like emotional like explanation and no battle at all, and that was like considered like a major risk they were taking. So it's like there is some degree of episodicness in every series, but like, I don't know, you compare this with like Avatar The Last Airbender, I don't think there's necessarily one huge battle every episode,
I think they did have like a scenario, like
yeah, they had a scenario.
Yeah, like they are in a place and there's a thing, and like compared to Korra, where it's very much like every episode is like a part of that season's arc.
I never got into Avatar.
It's good.
It's the closest thing to an anime you'll get in Western media, probably.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess it's like the question is hard for me to judge because I feel like I feel like the main when I look back on the different series and my fondness for them, it's not like the thing that I find that affects my fondness is not how episodic or not they were.
Yeah, I don't think it's a make or break thing for me, because there are definitely things you can do if it's not episodic. You have some certain freedoms, but at the same time, you take a lot of risks that could make it, inaccessible or difficult to follow. Especially, I'm an adult nowadays, and sometimes I feel like I'm dumber than the kids nowadays with like a busy schedule all the time. And if there weren't recaps, I would forget.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult.
I mean, the thing that drew me to anime in the first place was the fact that there was so much continuity between the episodes. When I was a kid, it made a very strong impression that, like, you could never tell any kind of deep story with continuity in SpongeBob or Rugrats. But when you went over to stuff like Pokemon gets a lot of flack for being episodic, but there's a thread going on throughout those seasons where you can see the character progressing over time and moving towards a goal.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely what hooked me about Digimon early on, is that like the first episode I ever saw was episode 2 Adventure, and I was like, I didn't know what was going on. And then I would mainly watch the show, especially I guess during the Frontier era, because Frontier era didn't, like, they primarily aired on cable, and then the reruns were on a non-cable network and stuff, and it was on daily after school programming, and so I mainly watched a bunch of Out of Order.
Frontier was in a morning time slot for me. That was terrible. Before school.
That's what VCR recording's for.
I told the story a couple times, but because I was one of the latecomers, I got in by the time it was already on Disney Jetix. They would air it in the evenings, actually, so I would actually watch it in the evenings. Well, like one episode or so a day. I would totally watch it Out of Order, but that was an interesting time for me because I was in middle school, so I'm 12 years old. I'm fairly better at catching on to long-term narratives than I probably would have at a younger age. And Jetix was interesting because pretty much everything on it was some kind of like narrative arc. It was like it was like a haven for all the Japanese anime and Western cartoons that were serialized in some way. Like, I guess that was kind of like the one thing a lot of these things had in common, because otherwise they were totally all over the board. I got into Digimon because I was waiting for Witch to come on, and that's a Western magical girl show, and that also had a very like cohesive like story going on, but episodic-ish. It was similar to like Digimon in that sense, so I was watching like Power Rangers, Digimon, and all that, and I watched it Out of Order for sure, but I definitely appreciated the penchant for a like dramatic narrative. But at the same time, the Western cartoons that like Toya just brought up, like, I used to watch Phineas and Ferb a lot, and by the way, no shit, I really, really like that show a lot. But even like if we're talking about the episodicness of this series right now, or Adventure 2020, there's still more of an ongoing plot line in the background than there would be for those kinds of like the kind of like Western thing that, I would also be watching like Phineas and Ferb. But then there was also those like all the stuff I was watching on Jetix. Like, I can name drop so many things like Get Ed, Super Monkey Robot Team Hyperforce Go, and Witch, and all that. There were some really bad things on there too. but all those things. There was like, I was starting to kind of slowly gain an appreciation for that kind of narrative storytelling. So I don't know what kind of point I was making, but like if you want to like talk about like Avatar: The Last Airbender or the other like Western Japanese kinds of shows that are in that kind of category, I think there was definitely a liking towards the kind of thing this kind of series can do that you can't have in like a super completely episodic narrative. But at the same time, I don't know if the kind of episodic narrative we're talking now really counts as that kind of completely purely like Western style, we completely go back to status quo at the end of every like sitcom-esque narrative, because it is a series that is generally speaking is planning to end after 1 year, and it's kind of trying to have its cake and eat it too, and that it doesn't completely lock you out if you're coming in late, but at the same time so that you can be like Jeff and I, who came in late or saw things out of order, and still not be completely locked out, but at the same time there is capability to take it into more like dramatic territory.
Well, I feel like for me, like the viewing the stuff out of order is actually what made it exciting. Well, not the only reason, but like it's part of the fun was to like piece together the narrative,
right?
And the fact that like it works. Like, you don't need to understand what's going on to parse an episode, but then it's like you can also put the puzzle pieces together, and then like like you could have a stretch where like I've seen every episode except for this one missing. I don't know what happened in this one episode, and like you hear them refer to some event, and it's like, oh, man, I can't wait to find out what that one event was. And like, so that's, I really like that aspect of it.
Because I've had such difficulty getting people into Adventure with the early episodes of Adventure because I've complained about how like slow it is at the beginning. I have actually considered dropping people in either at the Odaiba arc in Adventure, which is the third arc, or starting with 02, just because they pick up the pace much quicker. And like, even though that sounds counterintuitive, because you're like, oh, like that's the middle of the series, oh, that's a sequel. Not really. I think like the fact that they allude to things that like you hadn't heard about before but sound really cool make it more interesting. So
yeah, I think especially starting at 02 makes a lot of sense in that regard, where like it makes sense to like the old generation to be like a bit of like a legend to the new generation.
yeah.
But I feel like the platonic ideal in my mind of like a good balance in terms of like things being completely, quote unquote, completely episodic and accessible while still having a overarching like expanding toolkit is Cardcaptor Sakura. Which, you know, it's like things are completely episodic in one sense, but like, you know, like the toolkit of cards that she's building up is growing between each episode. And so it's like you might pick up in a random episode and like there are character relationships that are changing a little bit in the background, but also like she might use a card that's like, oh, when did you get that card? And then you can like, you know, like eventually watch them in a different order to find out when she got that card or something. But like there is like a through line, but it's a fun to have rather than a need to have. So that's kind of, I in theory like that aspect of Appmon, that it's like they're gathering apps, but they never really, I feel like, capitalized on that very well in terms of like employing them. But that's just kind of because I really like that format of Cardcaptor Sakura. It's not a fault of Appmon for not doing that. So yeah, and in the end, to the Last Airbender versus Legend of Korra comparison, it's like, in the end, the thing that I like love, like the part that I love the most out of both of the series is Zuko. And like, does that happen because Last Airbender was more episodic? Not really. You know, like, so I don't feel like I feel like it's kind of sidestepping the important stuff to some degree.
And I think format is very important too, because I can set a lot of expectations for a Digimon series under the assumption that it's probably going to run for a year. Like exactly a year. And you know, obviously there's like times it hasn't been like that. And obviously this is actually going to throw off a ton of our predictions if it turns out like we find out later that this is actually going for 2 years and not one, because we're expecting like, oh, by like halfway point, we're saying like that's episode 25, obviously. But like, you know, Avatar: The Last Airbender aired like, it has only barely above the number of episodes of your average Digimon series, but it aired it for 3 years in real life and like in like 3 parts. So there's a very different like things you can do within that formatting.
Yeah. Well, we've been going on for very long. This is a very meaty episode. So I think we should get into our closing thoughts, run through our ratings for these episodes. So I will give episode 9 3.5 stars. It was average with a little bit of fun extra of like learning more about the world and meeting Pokemon. Episode 10, the Tesla Jellymon debut, felt the most average, and so I can give it 3 stars. And episode 11, 3.5. What was episode 11? What happened? Oh yeah, the Ruli episode. You know, like, neat idea they're going for, but I feel like kind of let down with the execution. And episode 12, I had the most fun with, giving it 4 stars.
So yeah, I was a 3.5 on 9 because I was kind of middling, and then 10. I think I just really like Yoshido and Jellymon a lot. Anytime they're featured, like, they really carry the episode for me. So I think I like was a little more favorable for that because of that. A 3 on 11 and 3.5.
And I'm giving it 3 3s and a 3.5 for the last one, because I mean, this is the point where it is dragging on for me a bit. The most novel thing I'm seeing out of their execution of the premise right now is the fact that it seems like they're building up to the kids having made a mistake in sparing so many Digimon and not being a little more aggressive with them, especially blatantly evil ones.
12 was not even subtle about that, really.
Right.
Yeah. Well, for Ghost of the Month, mine's definitely, no doubt, Wizengamon.
Yep.
If Black Tailmon appeared, I would have to like seriously weigh my options, but I mean, it's no question.
I'm gonna give it to Tesla Jellymon. Wow, we're fans of the evolutions here.
I didn't know we had a Elon Musk fanboy.
No, I'm a fan of the OG, man.
the Nicola.
What, you don't play Fate Granddaughter?
Oh, I forgot.
And I'm going to have to give it to Weizen as well. That was a very strong debut, and the only thing that would make it stronger is if he actually shot them.
Yeah. Ruthlessly murder the enemies. That's Toya's motto. Also, speaking of Toya's desire to murder all the enemies, that chart that I made of like the status of the Digimon and where they are, it's like, if people haven't seen the graphic, it's basically like red for if they're an enemy, and there's diagonal line, basically, of
Yeah.
because Digimon appear as an enemy and then they become something else later on. But if this were Adventure 2020, it would just be like there's a diagonal red for enemy, and then everyone's dead after that, and it's just
Yeah, because nobody lived around long enough to deliver dialogue.
no. Well, I guess that brings us to the end of the show because we're running long and we don't have time for recommendations this month. Last month's Digiprompt was in honor of Sistermon CL. What Digimon would you want to appear in Ghost Game with a surprising quirk not usually associated with them? And we got lots of chef submissions. At Kai Bastin recommended Numamon or Sukamon as a chef. Andy Lucas OE said Meramon. And at Gigantus Smalls said Gabumon. And I agree with all of these. Please give us the Great Digi Bake Off. And and at Gigarijimon said Armageddon monstrously walks across Tokyo and fights crime by picking people up from the streets and his scorpion tail and drops them off to the police station. While not a quote-unquote threat, Hiro and Co. need to hide the kaiju-sized scorpion from view, somehow, similar to Vicaromon. He also takes a police cap from a friendly policeman and wears from a friendly policeman and wears it on his head because Armageddon thinks he looks cute wearing it. And I love the idea of having a giant Digimon they have to somehow hide from view. Although I guess as of now we've seen the huge threat that people have seen and definitely know about, so I don't know if they need to do that. But anyway, my favorite one though was from Dak and Jackster, who said an Omnimon that really wants to take up knitting, but his Guru/Gray hands barely have the dexterity to grasp the needles, so everything he makes looks kind of crummy. He enjoys it though. Yes, I want to see Omnimon obsessed with knitting. What kind of havoc would that cause for ghosts around town? Anyway, I want to see it. This month's Digiprompt is in honor of Repamon. What Digimon would you want to reimagine as having two distinct personalities, and what would the two sides bicker about? Send any feedback to podages@gmail.com, to podages on Twitter, or in the episode comments on podages.com. Check out the show notes to find a link to join our Discord server and continue the conversation, and share the podcast with your friends who couldn't care less about humanity, but will evolve into a laser gun Triceratops to protect the world's chocolate supply. And if this is your first episode, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever else you find podcasts. So let's go around and share where people can find us on the internet. Esther?
I'm at Listriel at Twitter.
Toya?
You can find me on Twitter at Towoya and on YouTube at Maniacs Channel.
And I am Jeffly Jeff on Twitter, and on Love It a Wee Bit, we will have an episode coming out soon, or maybe in the past. Maybe it's already out. With our Anime of the Year picks, even though we kind of stopped releasing episodes halfway through the year. Anyway.
Enemy of the Year. I'm looking forward to it.
Did I say enemy instead of anime?
No, it just sounded like it.
Oh, okay. I feel like I don't know how to do words anymore. But anyway, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll be back in 4 weeks to talk about episodes 13 through 16. Bye!
Bye!
And remember, never stop visualizing.
Gotta go back to the Digi world, 'cause Digimon don't get scared.
He's still stuck at like 14, right?
I think he's 16 in the most recent game, but it's really weird that like when I first started playing the games, he was several years older than me.
And now he's like a child.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Give me depressed millennial Sora.
I think I was closer in age to him, and I remember being a confused, closeted child and seeing the, what's it called, Atlantica world, and being confused with him shirtless. And now I'm like, that's a child. Oh, God. Anyway. And I mean, Kingdom Hearts 2 has the final antagonist pretty early on. I mean, as soon as Sora appears, there's the antagonist.
Yeah.
I just want to make my giant joke clear that I'm saying Sora is the antagonist of Kingdom Hearts 2.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, making sure that's clear.
Well, I guess most people probably haven't heard of that these days.
Oh, is that a common thing people say?
Oh, back in 2006, it was very common to say that like Yensid was lying, the nobodies have emotions, and Sora is committing genocide.
Oh, because like I was surprised by. I guess I wasn't like part of fandom back then, and I think I was by the time that the games finally canonically confirmed that to be the case in like Dream Drop Distance or something.
More like retconned it.
Well, I mean, they retconned it, but also like it was clear. It was subtext so loud.
Aspects of the plot don't make sense with or without it is the issue.
Like you can't say they have no emotion and then give a farewell scene to Axel that way. You know, like I think they had to know that they were lying to the viewers. You know,
the whole point is that they're reenacting memories of emotion. And so like that's a theme that continues from Chain of Memories, that if you remember something, even if it's not really there, then it feels real to you. Now I'm spoiling a totally different franchise.
Yeah, we went down it was a good well, but
J-
it's probably a little
We
too
should
far from.
we should start a Kingdom Hearts podcast.
I agree.